Age of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the Stormrift Realm Gate this episode are...
Hi, I'm Will, and the Great Wheel keeps on turning. Actually keeps on burning. We keep on rolling with the Dawnbringers.
I'm Josh, and I've taken the coin Malice, and I'm going to lead you on an expedition through the realms, and only you will be able to tell us if we have a successful settlement at the end.
And I'm Aaron, and take me down to the Hammerhall City, where Gyra is green and Ashy is gritty. Oh, won't you please take me home? Nice. In this episode, we cover the lore of the Cities of Sigmar Battletome for the second time. Get ready to hear a whole lot of shots fired, spinning our wheels, and human-centric perspectives. And then if we have time after all that, we'll talk about those free people. How are you tonight, speaking of, fellow humans?
Great.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
That's a sneak preview that there's a lot of humans in this book. Good. I'm glad to hear it, you guys.
How are you?
If not, we'd have to unpack a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, how are you?
Don't ever ask how Aaron'd be. And I'm doing all right. I think I'm doing just fine. Excited to be here. Excited to talk about these cities of Sigmar. Peoples. I don't know why I said it like as a plural thing. Anyways, doing just fine. But before we get to the Cities of Sigmar, which is I think all anyone wants to hear about, but too bad it's our show. We get to pick. Instead, I would love to know what you guys have been up to since last we talked. I feel like some of you I haven't chatted with in a hot second. So what you guys been doing in the hobby? Let's start with Will because his name was first up above. Hey, Will, what you been doing?
I've been working on Cities of Sigmar, sort of.
No.
Specifically, I've been doing I call it Cities of Hob, because I'm taking my 100 Hobgrots and converting them to work in the new Cities of Sigmar book.
Fun.
Nice.
And I talk about it more in depth in Path to Story, but I found a way for these models to work in 4 different armies, like using the rules of 4 different battle tomes. So that's been like my project has been piecing together that puzzle of how to do this.
Wow.
I mean, at this point, though, like, why stop at 4? I reckon just figure out how to do like every army.
I feel like it's going to get there.
Okay.
Because, how many armies have dude on a small base with a sword and shield? It's not that complicated.
That's true. I agree completely. Right on. So, might I ask, what are the other 3 armies? I know you said you talked about it. Maybe.
So it's Cities of Sigmar, because the Hobgrots are going to be my steel helms. They just work for the Cruel Boys, standardly. They're just big rots, so they work as Gloomspike Gits. And since I have them on foot and mounted, I'm going to use them as Chaos Marauders for Slaves of Darkness.
That one I didn't expect. That one is out of left field. Okay.
So that's the one I've been planning for a while, and I couldn't figure out how I wanted to do it. And then the Cities book is like the final puzzle piece of like, if I do it like this, it works for both of them.
Well, right on. I can't wait to see how it plays out. And listeners, if you want to see or hear how it plays out, I reckon you should probably check out Path to Story, because I'm sure Will is going to talk about them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Pictures.
Right on. Hey, Josh, what you been up to in the hobby, my friend?
Some reorganizing, but also we got Crypt of Blood for the Warcry starter. So I've been painting up the terrain for that, so that eventually we could get some games and try out the introductory missions that they have in there. So,
is there terrain as cool as it looks?
It is cool, yeah, and there's some neat details on the crypt, or on the coffin, and on the statue itself, which is pretty cool. So I'm trying out some unique. I haven't done much OSL with candlelight and stuff, so I'm going to try some of that and try a new Bronze Age technique, and so it gives me an opportunity to play with some fun things I haven't tried before.
That would be cool. No, absolutely.
That's awesome.
I asked if it was cool. However, at the same time, it's hard to like live up to the Gnarlwood terrain, though, right? Like anything after that is like, ooh, it really has to shine. So, but that's not the point, right? It's a starter set. It's not meant to be this high technical, like intricate, like setup. But
right,
it's on my shopping list to pick up as well.
Nice.
Because I know a couple of people who are actually interested in picking up Warcry. I feel like I've talked a little bit about before, but like if there's maybe a more introduction, like if it seems like even that simplified, like toned down game is a little overwhelming for some folks. So maybe even if I had a more introductory type system, maybe it would stick better. So I am looking forward to picking it up.
Cool.
Yeah, right.
What have you been doing in the meantime?
Oh man, look at you guys asking me questions. I love this. I'm the one who asks questions. No, what have I been working on? So, God, this isn't necessarily the time to bring it up yet, but as a sneak preview, listeners, we're in the planning stages, despite the fact that it's rapidly approaching, of a little get together, a little shindig, a little meeting of the minds, perhaps, of the Moral Realms crew and assorted friends and family, supposedly. And we're going to play a few games. We're going to try a few different systems out. We're going to share some ideas. We're going to, mix and match a little bit. None of that makes any sense, I realize. But to do so, I'm going to actually have to have like models to play with, which is kind of a tall order for this guy.
It's pretty weird, yeah.
Yeah, right. But my goal is if I'm going to try a bunch of different game systems, and by that I mean all 3 game systems, I kind of want them all to be like related or like unified in some front. And I was looking through all my different armies to see like what group of models do I have that like I could play in all those in a bunch of different game systems, maybe Warcry, maybe Underworlds, maybe a little Path to Glory. And so I think of all the things that I've assembled, the largest reach I have is probably Khorne, despite the fact that I'm not even really the biggest Khorne fan, but here we are. And so I have a fair bit of like actual AOS like units put together for Khorne. I've got all the Underworld's Khorne warbands put together just sort of accidentally. And so I figured to complete the trifecta, I would start assembling they have a name, Claws of Karanak, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I'm a couple dudes down putting those guys together. And I feel like that has evolved into a little, Fleshhound themed grouping of dudes. And so that might be what I what I might bring to that fancy weekend coming up in the fall. So more to come on that front. Maybe not more to come on that front. I guess I'm not going to promise anything, but that is what I have assembled. Unfortunately, I've already assembled the cool guys in that warband, which is to say the leader and that dude that kind of looks like a Fleshhound, even though he is not. And so I'm losing a little steam on like the mooks who are. I mean, they're fine. They're great, and but like this is a diversion from what I was working on, and so which is terrain, which I suppose is not any more interesting than mook Khorne guys, but still. But I will finish these guys up shortly. And then, God, I don't know how I'm going to paint them. Like literally, I don't know the mechanism by which I will paint them. I have long since forgotten how to. What's a
contrast?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is what I'll do.
3 colors.
I painted 5 Blood Reavers. I mean, it's years ago at this point, I think, with contrast, and they turned out for me like splendid. And so that is exactly what I'll do for the rest of them as well. Cool and great. Yeah, that's all I've been working on. Does anybody else have anything else that they want to share that they've been working on?
Nope.
No.
Cool. Guys, nice and thorough. We could jump into the story phase right now, but just kidding. We've got some more. What's the word? I always forget the word that I'm looking for.
Bookkeeping?
Yeah, I get bookkeeping. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what I was looking for. Well, we still got more bookkeeping before we get there. Hold tight. We're almost there. Listeners, we're so close. But let me do a few Mortal Realms plugs, and they go like this. You can find more episodes of this podcast, the one that you're listening to, Story Phase, The Mortal Realms, and all of our other shows at themortalrealms.com. You can email us your feedback, and I just wish you would. No one ever does. And like, hey, listener, if you were to do it right now, you'd be like the first person in years at this point. It would really stand out. Your name would live forever in infamy if you just gave us a shout at mortalrealms@gmail.com. I tell you, you won't be disappointed. I'll even respond. Me, personally, I will do it. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/themortalrealms to support the show and get early releases of the Story Phase, which is this show, and access to exclusive content like the Pocket Realms, which are short story phases hosted by Davy, Aaron, who is me. And then also, I finally get to add something to this little list. You also get access to Warhammer Bros, which is a newer segment show where Paven attempts to get his brother into 40K, which I don't like the goal, but I like family bonding. I like, I like not even encouraging. I like badgering people into doing the things that you want to do. So like those 2 components, I'm a really big fan of. So I've been listening. I've been following along. I'm a patron of my own Patreon. And I'm really digging what they're putting out there. And then if you cannot or do not want to pitch in monetarily, which is totally fine. I don't blame you. Then head on over to your podcast service of choice and give us a review. I just noticed that someone gave us a review earlier this year whose name escapes me. If I were a better podcast host, I would have like give them props or shout outs or like, I don't know, read their name or something, but it's too late. The name has escaped. But be like that person who gave us an awesome review or give us a terrible review. I guess I don't really mind all that much. I just really like the attention. And give us stars, write us a little blurb. Would really appreciate it. Your reviews go a long way in terms of discoverability. And then if you don't even want to do that, which I admit is a lot of clicks, you can just go ahead and tell a friend about the Mortal Realms. They'll be glad you did. You'll be glad you did. We'll be glad you did. It's a win-win-win. All right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
topics to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, small talk is hard. I have a hard time talking to strangers. What a great way to broach a new friendship by talking about the Mortal Realms or a new
friendship.
Yeah,
just talk to random people on the bus and see if they listen.
Or a new enemyship rivalry. I guess. I mean, all the above would be fine. It just adds a little spice to life. So there we go. One final thing, which is not really a plug, but I will say we're going to talk about the Cities of Sigmar Battletome. I'm really excited to do so, but we would not be able to do so as easily if it weren't for the fact that GW is so very kind enough to send us a review copy of this book. And so because of that, we will say, hey, thanks, GW. Mighty kind of you. Yeah. All right, I've been talking too long. And the peoples, they want this story phase. So, Will, this time, would you be willing to take us there if you're so inclined?
I will give it a try.
It's not easy.
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms.
Wow, but you make it look easy or sound easy, I guess, technically.
As the camera's off, you didn't see me sweating.
Just buckets. It's like that Key and Peele gif of what's his face. Anyways, hey, we made it. We're at the story phase. Whew, finally. We're talking about the Cities of Sigmar Battletome for the second time. I started listening to the first episode thinking that I was going to glean some insights. I was going to learn something about what the cities used to be so I could compare and contrast to what they are now. But I got probably 3 minutes into listening to myself talk, decided I hated it and turned it off. So this is, we're shooting from the hip today. But it was like 2019 is maybe when the first episode of Cities was, which is a very, very long time ago. Who could even remember that far back? But I do know. Well, actually, I don't know. I wonder if we even had this segment, the best segment, everyone's favorite segment of describing the faction in one sentence. I don't know if that existed back then, but let's pretend like it didn't, or forget if it did, and instead start fresh. Let's start fresh for the listeners and try to give our best one-sentence description of the faction today as it exists. So, sorry, well, I'm going to keep making you go first because you're just top of mind. Would you be willing to give it take a stab at it? Give it a try.
Yeah. Let's see. They're not that strong. They're not that magical. They're not that powerful. Yet these normal dudes just keep moving forward and they just keep turning the great wheel.
Someone's got to. All right. Very cool. I can't even imagine what could be added to that one sentence explanation, but I'm sure Josh is going to try. Hey, Josh, would you be willing to give us your best one sentence? Oh my gosh, did you write it down here? You son of a gun.
I
did. Your best one sentence description of the Cities of Sigmar.
A metropolitan bucket of multicultural identities and ideals.
I like it. It also seems a little aspirational. I think we're probably going to talk about like how multicultural it actually is. But
there's a lot of fervor in this book.
Sure, that is a whole bunch of fervor. You can smell it, and that's how fervorous it is.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Gargoyles are all over it.
All right, so yeah, Cities of Sigmar. I think we're getting some ideas. There's a lot. It's got a lot of elements to it. It's like multifaceted is a great way to look at it. Of dreamers, of strivers, achievers, who are maybe greater than the sum of their parts. I don't know why I'm trying to come up with a description. That's not my job. I just have you guys do it. So that's that's the faction we're going to be talking about. But again, I didn't listen to the last episode. I don't know how much time we spent previously on the history of the Cities of Sigmar, but I think regardless if we spent much time on the timeline before, I I also think that the history of the Cities of Sigmar is also the history of the Mortal Realms. And fortunately, or unfortunately, the Mortal Realms show has spent a lot of time talking about the history of the Mortal Realms. And I think we've covered a lot of the main, the big tentpole milestone parts of the history of the Cities of Sigmar already. So because of that, I'd maybe want to gloss over the timeline a little bit. However, I keep saying the word however, there's probably some interesting new stuff in here. And I'm curious if you guys were able to pick out anything from, let's say, the Age of Myth or Age of Chaos from that timeline that maybe new to this book, or maybe it was just new to you that sparked your imagination or something that you didn't know about before. Did you find anything new in the timeline here?
Unfortunately, just like double check to make sure I'm not missing anything. No, not really. Everything that I've seen in the timeline, I feel like we've seen before, which kind of made me sad because the Age of Chaos section only covers up until Sigmar leaves and goes to Azir. And I really wanted to hear more about like what these people were doing during the Age of Chaos, and we didn't get it.
Yeah, true. I think you might be right. At least in the Age of Myth and Age of Chaos, and a side note, probably Sigmar and Age of Sigmar.
I think there's some new stuff in Sigmar. And
okay. Then I won't be so quick to pan it then. But yeah,
I think unless I'm missing.
So my thing is like there are things that look familiar, and I don't know if they're new or if I just don't remember them being, because like especially like the treadwheel one is like. I have no idea if it's new or not.
Sure. One thing that stood out to me, and we knew this before, this has been a theme, but like it stands out in a cities book particularly because you're getting that like human, like mortal perspective is they call out at the end of the Age of Chaos. That's the Stolen Hero story, talking about how those left behind essentially bemoan the fact that if Sigmar hadn't started stealing all their best souls, like would they have been better set up to survive the Age of Chaos? And again, that's not new. I think that's been talked about before, but like having it talked about in this context always stands out to me. Like it's most poignant a point for these folks specifically. And so, and frankly, it's a theme that I'd love to hear like a story like rise out of, or like a novel
from the reclaimed point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Technically, it kind of shows up in God Eater's Son.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one yet.
Okay, good point. So like that's a ripe like theme to mine, I think, especially from like a human or a mortal's perspective in the Cities of Sigmar.
All right.
Cool. Any thoughts about Age of Myth or Age of Chaos before we keep going? We're going to gloss over this potentially quickly.
Yeah, not those sections.
All right, let's jump into the Age of Sigmar, Realm Gate Wars, yada, yada, yada. A bunch of new cities, which is important to the Cities of Sigmar. Those seeds of...
Yes.
What do they call them? Seeds of creation? Seeds of
hope.
Hope. Seeds of hope.
Yep.
So it mentions those seeds from were those from that campaign all those many years ago?
Yep.
Yeah. So again, we've talked about those before, but they pop up. Did you guys have anything from the Age of Sigmar that jumped out at you that you wanted to talk about?
So was the Ice Bridge Siege new, or was that been in there before?
So it has existed before. I don't think it existed in a cities book, but it definitely comes up in the Ogre Battletome.
Okay.
Battletome. And sometimes in the Stormcast Battletome, because really the story is about ogres eating the souls of Stormcast. I feel like they just put more emphasis on the paragraph where it's the gyrocopters show up.
Yeah.
Like I think that part
and Stormcast helping each other out. Yeah.
This is the most detail we've gotten of this story that has existed before.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, then do you want to remind people about what happens?
Yeah. So basically the Tempest Eye gets founded and the Thunderbelly's Maw tribe comes marching up on a ice bridge, a frozen bridge. And they have kind of always existed like higher up in the mountains. They found ways to like walk across almost like solid clouds. And now they're going to take on Tempest Eye. The Stormcast go to stop them, but they start realizing that ogres are so hungry they can eat the lightning bolt that comes out of a Stormcast when they die. And they pretty much only survive because the Gyro Corps, just a bunch of Dwarden helicopters, bomb the bridge so the ogres can't pass.
Nice. And all while doing a very curt salute between the Duarden and the Stormcast, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And it mentions that the Stormcast had saved a column of dispossessed who were fighting ogres, down 2-1. And so this is them, acknowledging their debt, saying we're even.
Nice.
Yeah, a crisp salute.
Yeah, there you go. Curt maybe implies something else. I love it. I love two serious people giving mutual respect to each other. Add that to my list of favorite things. Very cool. Well, that's neat. It's interesting as these battle tomes progress, how they're are more and more quote unquote ages that they need to cram in here. And I understand they're doing work in different ways and that they both need to catch new people up to what had come before, but then also trying to cram new stuff in. And I've often bemoaned the fact that it seems as if we get fewer and fewer interesting snapshot stories in here. And so it's nice to see when we get them. I mean, this Icebridge Sledge is a fun little tale. So I hope they continue to find ways to add the new, even if it's ones that, stories that maybe are shared across different battle tomes, amidst the big, I'm going to use the term again, amidst the big tentpole, milestone historical events as well. So with that being said, hey, let's keep on going. Let's talk about the Time of Tribulations, the Soul Wars era. Were there any new stories there?
Again, Zahar's Inferno? That was new for me, but I didn't know if that's shown up anywhere else or not.
I don't recall, so let's pretend like it's new. Tell me about it.
Excellent. Well, it's a short story about Hallowheart, essentially. Zahar is one of the many wizards there, and it was infested by Skaven, and until it reached a point where Zahar had to use a wide variety of different means to assemble a bunch of the wizards and head down into the catacombs. And they essentially spent many, many hours casting numerous spells to cleanse the Skaven out. And to this day, it's kind of banned, and the stench of sizzled Skaven still can be smelled amongst the walls because of all the arcane energy spent.
Nice. And stinky.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Well,
the ogres would love it.
Yeah, right?
Right.
Well, actually, you're fast. I mean, later in this book, they talk about something very similar to that.
Right.
Exactly. Very cool. Well, you'd mentioned the trial by treadwheel above.
So,
what did you like about that?
Yeah, again, I don't know if this is new because it's a Soul Wars thing that takes place in Lethis, and I know we've had stories there. But what I liked about this is it does add new aspects from this book into the story, which is in Lethis, there are giant treadmills that people walk on to basically pay a debt. And if they pay off their debt, a soul shepherd, which is one of the new models, will protect you from going to Nagash, essentially. Mm-hmm. So you're basically paying for salvation. And I just think it's cool that this starts popping up throughout this book of the humans kind of have a way to protect you from going and being tortured by Nagash for all time.
Yeah, by going to Morda, a minor deity that has escaped Nagash's clutches thus far.
Yeah, so thus far is I think a big operative word. But I think it's really cool, just that they are adding this stuff in, and then you have Nagash, of course, not liking it. He sends a bunch of Night Haunt to deal with this, and Fusiliers with Silvershot beat them away, which is interesting because this story takes place before we get the Castellite formation, which is the big shields. So I think they're just renaming and retconning handgunners into being Fusiliers.
That's the impression I got.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
My favorite part of this story, not to steal from you, but is there folks who had left the wheels to hide, or they knew they were driven to terror because of the wail of the ghosts. They then rendered their deal moot, and then they broke their contract or whatever, and so they are no longer going to be saved from Nagash.
Gotta sign a new contract.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess the contract is changed. Pray I don't alter it further. I don't know. I can't remember the quote.
Right.
So, y'all get it. All right. Very cool. It's rare that we get a new story, if this is in fact new, in the Soul Wars era. So more power to them. GW, keep them coming. But I think that then brings us to the Broken Realms, the Age of Beasts time frame this is, I think, where this sets the stage probably for a lot of the information that we get about the cities of Sigmar in sort of this present day, or close to it anyways. This is where I think the Dawnbringers is first mentioned, which is where they first are broadly sort of set out, so that seems to be really the hallmark of the cities of Sigmar in this time frame, is sort of I keep saying sort of the marching out of the Dawnbringers and sort of going out to retame the world in so many words. Did you guys have any thoughts about this era for the cities of Sigmar, or any specific stories that jumped out at you that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So the story that marks the era, titled Era of the Beast, for the most part, I was just like, oh, every book has this. It's just a paragraph that explains what Kragnos did. And for the most part, that's true. It talks about Alariel and Teclis accidentally letting Kragnos out. But then at the end, it mentions that Phoenicium, one of the pre-existing cities of Sigmar,
Seed of Hope, I think.
Yeah, Seed of Hope, that doesn't have rules anymore. It talks about them having some sort of portent of disaster, and basically the city kind of falling back into the sap that it's like built on top of. And so they actually pull their soldiers back, and they don't go on Dawnbringer crusades because they want to take care of things back home first.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting that they gave in narrative a justifiable reason for why they're not in the book and why they're not doing crusades.
Yep. I know. I thought that was clever as well.
Well, and furthermore, I wonder if this is also them setting, not to be conspiracy theory, but I wonder if this is also them setting the stage for just getting rid of the whole thing to some degree. I'm curious.
Oh no, it happened. Shucks.
Nuts. All the Phoenix Guard, their last stand, and they all have been sapped. They've been sapped of their lives.
What is interesting though, it could go the other way.
I'll be the judge of that, but okay.
They could use this to pull the units away and then bring the city back with new elves.
Ooh, next very well could. Yeah. All right, we're dabbling dabbling into a scrying face type stuff. More to come on this, I think, in a series of questions later. So I think we can put a pin in that. Right on. Any other stories or broad thoughts, even from the Era of the Beast, that you guys want to talk about?
Oh, well, they kind of talk about the Order of Azir a little bit in the same kind of general section where they talk about the dissatisfaction with the orders failing their duties, with all these cults uprising throughout the cities and having to redouble their efforts. And it's fun because they kind of mention Haskell Hexbane and his hunters, and they also talk about the Vendenses, and so they kind of bring in these other witch hunter type units, and they even mention Hannaford Toll and Armon Callis, and even Jelson Darroch from
Curse City.
Yeah, thank you.
From
Curse City. Yeah. So kind of bringing all these characters together, saying yes, they're all doing things for the Order, and they're out there in the world, trying to take care of the internal strife.
Hey, Josh, that reminds me of a question posed by a listener. If you would indulge me for a second, a patron of the show, Drake. Who would this be? First question from Drake? I can't recall. So if this is first question from you, Drake, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the patronage. They wanted to know what's the Order of Azir up to. Is there any cool witch hunter lore? I don't know if there's much more beyond what Josh just said specifically, but at the very least, all the witch hunters that I know of, anyways, were name dropped in this book, so they are not forgotten. Exactly. At least,
yeah.
And there are even rules for Hexbane hunters in this book.
That's nice. That's fun.
And the Vendense actually too. Yeah, you can take them as a pair,
but not Jaren, right? Is he just a?
Yeah, Jelson. He's a legend, and then Callis and Toll never got models.
Right. Yeah, but they do have rules for them to play along with your Age of Sigmar force.
And this doesn't take place in this section of the book, but in the Path to Glory section, they have name generator tables you can roll on. Mm-hmm. And in Shaiish, the last names include Vendense, Darroch,
fun.
Van Brecht, who was the Stormcast, whose lineage became vampires. So turns out the witch hunters we have are a part of families that are so big, their names are included in name generators. So we've got that.
I think that counts as cool witch hunter lore, if you ask me.
Right.
I'm of that opinion. Right on. Very neat. What else do we know about the Broken Realms Age of Beasts?
It introduces the idea of the lore that brings us all the new models with the Out Into the Murk story.
Oh, sure.
Which it introduces Talia Vedra, who's the new named character, the Lioness of the Parch. And she came up with this idea of just like big shield. That was the whole strategy, was big shield. And it worked once. So now everyone has to do it. And no matter where you're going, the official strategy is big shield.
The Castellite formation.
The Castellite formation. I guess because of that, we can go in a couple different directions in terms of what we want to talk about. I think now it brings us up to the things that we learned about in the Dawnbringer's Harbingers book. And if you want to, find out more detail about what occurred there, by all means, go listen to that episode. But like just sort of at a high level, it's probably worth mentioning that when we talk about Dawnbringer Crusades, it through the events of that story has spurred the two largest or one largest, depending on how you look at it, cities of Sigmar, Hammerhall, whether Aksha or Gyra, to launch their own Dawnbringer Crusades out into the wilderness. And so I think that is, essentially is the farthest that the story has gone, sort of in tandem with what we're reading about in this book as well. And it's, I think, bolstered by the fact that what's her name? Talia has created this Castellite formation and has allowed sort of these Dawnbringer Crusades to be, more sturdy and more resilient and more successful. So I bring this up because I'm trying to discuss, highlight, dissect sort of where the story is currently as it relates to both the Dawnbringers and this book here. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Where are we at? Like,
including that, it's hard to talk about it because I don't know if this is going to come up in the upcoming Dawnbringers book, the second one. But in the first Dawnbringers book, we are told about this big conspiracy that Callus and Toll are investigating. And then in the Cities of Sigmar book, the conspiracy is figured out and dealt with by Talia. And she sort of uses that to take control of Hammerhall, and she does the Castellite formation, but she also changes the idea of the Crusades from being Azerite focused, taming the realms, and she turns it into a reclaimed focus, taking back our homelands type thing. And I think that's a fundamental change to how the Cities of Sigmar have been operating up until that point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, even to the point of changing the coat of arms, the colors for Hammerhall, actually. And I think one of the interesting aspects about this book is they introduce a lot of coat of arms for all the cities and their shield markings. But one of the interesting things, I think, is it talks about the Dawnbringer Crusades, and that's the main focus. So regardless of which city it is, it focuses a bit on Hammerhall just because this is where the Castellite formation was developed and kind of honed in, and we need more expert formations, et cetera, to make these more successful. But I think the focus of the whole book really is this is how you put together a Dawnbringer Crusade, and these are all the new models in this formation. Because later in the book they also say, but there are also those standing armies, the fortress armies that stay at home, and they're composed of all of these different units, and including the dwarves and the elves and the other units that all work together with these new models. So I think it's kind of interesting that they make that distinction that this Castellite formation is only used in the field. It's not necessarily used in the city. And that's why you have all these other forces that you still use together, and they may or may not be in your Castellite formation. So,
yeah, you make a good point. This is very much like a Dawnbringer's Crusade army book,
right? That
are associated with cities. It's not necessarily this is a City of Sigmar book. And
or maybe they're becoming interchangeable, and this is the evolution of what Cities of Sigmar is.
Yeah.
Or I guess they both are hand in hand, right? That speaks to the distinction that Josh was just sort of talking about. Man, we got a lot of different directions we can go. There's a lot of threads, a lot of tangents.
I was just going to pick one tangent off what you had said, Josh. You mentioned the coat of arms. It's such a small thing, but probably one of my favorite things in the book is just like throughout the book, we get not just like the icon and the color scheme of the cities, but like the different heraldry. And there's a description going into like what that means. Like, this city has these two animals and they express like these beliefs that they have. And it's just super cool to see like how the cities see themselves, how we start to see this cultural thing happen, because there hadn't been like many unifying themes between the cities, and having just like these coat of arms is super cool. And then they have like the different sets of steel helm armor sitting on armor stands, so you can see the color schemes, but like in the way the soldiers in the mortal realms would see them, not just looking at a model. And I just think that's one of the other coolest things they have.
Right. Yeah. They do spend a lot of time too throughout the book talking about the corn malice and and that concept. And it's interesting because malice is the spear that's in Excelsis, but they've used that terminology and they've made it this coin malice is something you take to undergo the Dawnbringer Crusade for a wide variety of reasons. But they instituted that across all the realms, regardless of where you're from. So they I think that's one of the hallmarks of the book is that, yes, we're all different cities. We all have our unique characteristics, but we're all humans, elves, dwarven, and ogres now living together, and they share things. And they, there's this flux of information and sharing and how the coin malice works, what you have to do. And then, it kind of goes through what I thought was fascinating. The whole, like, how does this crusade start? Let's put it together. Why are these certain components part of it? How long does it take to get where it's going? What does it do when it gets there? What do they start with? What is each person required to do? So it goes really in depth, I thought, in terms of how this whole expedition is supposed to happen, how it kind of works, how these settlements grow and become cities, and they're making these star bridges so that Stormcast could travel back and forth without worrying about cursed skies. And so there's like this evolution of the story, but they also tell you exactly how these strongholds and strong points grow into something bigger. And on top of that, they have all these maps that show the successful ones and the ones that didn't make it, So it's really, I think, an interesting way to portray it. Like, we've got lots of them out there. And for a while, they were just criminals, all these other poorly formed units. And a lot of those didn't make it. And, and so that's why the Castlight formation is such a big change. It's like now they're well-trained individuals. They're more successful in making these strong points. And then, and hopefully taming the wilds. Yeah. But so I thought it was really interesting how they kind of showed the evolution of all of that, what they're doing, including the one personal story from what's her name? Edmera. She essentially takes the coin malice, and throughout the whole book, you're kind of following her quests and her story. She's writing home to her dad. And, so you get to see the evolution and a personal point as well. So I thought that was all very well done.
Yeah. Well, and it answers like a complaint people have had since the beginning of Age of Sigmar, which is the joke, where are the farmers? Mm-hmm. Like, not that anyone actually cares about farmers. I mean, I do, coming from the Midwest. Yeah. But it's more of like, well, we have gods fighting. We have all these high-minded things, but like, what about the day-to-day lives? What about the logistics of this setting? And just like you were saying, Josh, this book goes into it. Like, there's a cool 2-page spread of like the specific kit like someone will carry with them on crusade, like including their eating utensils. It's the most personal, like human level book that I think we've gotten so far.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, it goes into so much detail, into a lot of like the basic, normal human. What are they going through? What do they got to worry about with their kit? And when they get to the settlement, and it's I think it's, like you said, one of the first really in-depth aspects we get from like that human mortal kind of perspective.
Yeah, it just like a funny aside. It's always talking about people complaining about how heavy the new Castlight shields are. Which is the most human thing. Like, you have all these other armies that have like the crazy big helmets or like the super long spears, like the Lumineth, and no one ever you never hear a Lumineth complaining about it.
Yeah, we even talk about the Dwarden who wear, and march for days and wear heavy stuff, but their complaining is turned into an art form. They do it. How well they complain is part of their culture.
Like we never see people talk about living in a magical world negatively until now.
Well, I feel like we've come across a few negative things.
Yeah, I guess like the day-to-day aspects of living in a magical world of, these feel far too big. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. It's more humanized, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, these are like regular people. Yeah, that we'd be complaining to for hauling all that stuff. Right?
Oh man! All right, I don't even know where to go from here. You guys, you've seeded all sorts of threads. The question is where to go next. Since we were still, I guess, adjacent to the timeline discussion, and I know we kind of leave the predicting towards the end, but I'll just bring it up now. A question from a friend of the show, Thundercake from the Discord. Wait, hold up, guys! Did I forget to do my question preamble? Like it's maybe my second. It's my second favorite thing to do on this show. All right, you guys ready? Let's go for a ride. Let me take you on a journey. Here's the deal, listeners. Hey, would you like to get a question on the show? Of course you would. That was a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer. But if you want to get a question on the show, this is what you do. You need to hang out in the Discord. And that Discord is www.themortalrealms.com/Discord. Pretty easy to remember. You're listening to the Mortal Realms, and it's a Discord server. But you got to hang out in that server. I believe it's the Stories and Lore channel, but I'm not positive. I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it memorized. I don't think about you guys all the time. So what you need to do is you need to be hanging out there all the time. And when I just decide on a whim, if I wanted to get some questions seeded into an episode, I will. Like a thief in the night, without warning, ask, hey, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask about X, Y, or Z? Who knows what the topic's going to be? Not me. And then if you have any questions, you ask them there. I copy and paste them into a separate document. The formatting goes to hell. I have a really hard time copying and pasting correctly. And then when the show rolls around, like right now, I will ask them. And so it's pretty simple. Thanks for allowing me.
Lots of great questions.
So here's one. Friend of the show, Thundercake. They wanted to know, with this book seeming to really focus on the one city, I think he means Hammerhall there, the mercenary leader turned main character, he means Talia. We'll talk more about her later. And her reforms, that's the cast life formation. We've already touched on that. Are there any clues to the next city theme, which presumably is going to be continued on in the Dawnbringers book? Do you guys have any, I don't know if there's going to be a theme, but do you guys have any predictions as to what is next for the cities? Like what in terms of, from a timeline perspective, story?
So as far as the next city that might get a spotlight, I am going to throw out Greywater Fastness.
Oh.
I know this is a section we typically do later, but there's a lot of cool things coming out of Greywater Fastness. Partially because they are the gunpowder city, and we have a lot of new gunpowder units. But they also drop a hint of other things going on that could lead to more story moving forward. The Golemkin that typically hang out with the KO, they're mentioned as being mercenaries for Greywater Fastness.
Oh, all right. Hey, Josh, you got any predictions? We're talking about plot, right? Or the direction the story goes. Where do you think this might go next?
That's a great question. I'm thinking eventually Lethis is going to become a focus where Lagash is going to attack it, and they're going to have to defend it, and Morda, will get more involved, and so that'd be interesting.
Morda involved. I'm going to take a different strategy in answering this question, in that I think the next city, quote unquote, theme is actually going to be whatever those Dawnbringers crusades from Hammerhall, wherever they're going to go to settle. I think we know that one is going to make it and one that it isn't. I think whichever one makes it is going to be the next focus, whatever that is. So
gotcha.
And I think maybe we even knew what they were going to be called, or maybe it was just the names of the crusades. I can't remember. But the point is, whatever okay, so whatever their destinations are going to be, one of the destinations was going to be, feels like it might be important. Though I don't know. Who's to say?
Good point. Yep. I have not read that, but I need to pick that up.
Joshua, or just listen to
that, even better.
The most recent episode of.
Splendid.
The Marvelous Podcast. Storyface. Cool. So, all right, let's jump into a few other more broader, less specific topics. You guys have touched on a lot of these things, but we'll dive into because folks had some questions. So, I know a lot of folks wanted to know more about you'd mentioned multicultural earlier, or the multiracial aspects of City of Sigmar and where we sort of find ourselves there. And so I think what we see in this book, it's quite a bit of human focus and then everybody else. But it seems as like everybody else has their own fans, and there's a series of questions about different races in the Cities of Sigmar. And so in no particular order, I'm just going to go down the line. So, for example, there is a elven component contingent in the Cities of Sigmar, and patron of the show, Will Lawless, wanted to know any reference at all to the Wanderers to cover the sunsetting of their models. So there are a bunch of different types of elves related to the Cities of Sigmar that seems to have been narrowed down quite a bit. Let's focus on the Wanderers. Do we get much reference to them in this book at all?
Nope.
Sorry, Will.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just talked about how like they had a cool idea for Phoenicium and like the Phoenix Guard and why they went away. We don't get that for Wanderers.
Yeah, there's just nothing.
So the mentioning of the Phoenicium and sort of that the Phoenix Guard is the extent of I think what we really saw from that, like the High Elf contingent as well. So like that, it's better than nothing, but not much. And what's left then is they speak of these elves sort of in the abstract. But we all know that it's really just the leftovers of the Dark Elf range, or what remains in
the Darkling Covens.
Yeah, and I don't even can't remember what they're called. What are the dragon ones? Order Serpentis.
Order Serpentis and the Scourge Privateers.
Yep. So those were present before and continue to be present now.
What is interesting is like because of that, the lore that they have for the elves in this book, like, has drastically changed since there's no longer wood or high elf stuff. It talks more about them being like secluded in their own areas of the different cities because they're the more secretive types of elves.
True.
Compared to the other ones. And then also, I feel like they changed the lore for the Order Serpentis.
Yes, they talk about Narcath being like their home realm in Olgu. They had to leave that.
And they talk about them being more like just straight up beast tamers and like beast hunters, when I remember the thing that drew me to them in the past was like they kept on trying to almost like genetically engineer new dragons, and that's why you get things like the Hydra, because they goofed and they made a mistake.
Oh, really?
And
interesting.
That's gone away. They're just back to being regular beast hunters.
Yeah, beast hunters, tamers.
Yeah.
I think if they have to be sort of like the stand-ins for now, like elfdom as a whole in the Cities of Sigmar, they need to go like more generic with them, which is a shame because the models are not necessarily generic. And by maybe I take that back, not generic, general. And there's a difference, I think, between generic and general. So I think they need to go more general with their description so that they can sort of like take an all-comer approach, because they're again the less standouts from elves in City of Sigmar, which should be a sort of a cornerstone for this faction. Other elven thoughts that you guys have, which is not to say elven thoughts, but thoughts about elves.
We had blown past it before, but I realized that there was another question that we technically answered. Question from the resident SAS master, which is, what happened to that city with the phoenixes in the lore anyways?
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they are just hanging out at home, being couch potatoes, waiting for bad things to happen, and they're not really doing anything.
Yep, they're preparing.
Yeah.
This is why it's so hard to make an outline for this darn show, you guys. You never know what direction the conversation is going to go. No, this is for the listeners, not for you guys. I don't care what you guys think. I kid. True. I'll keep them coming. What other elven thoughts do you guys have? And how'd you feel about this? Give me your emotions too.
No, I think they're. One of the new units they've added are the Wilder Corps, which are the new scouts. Typically they're reclaimed, and so I think they kind of take the place of the Wanderers in this particular, in the cities, and that's why they maybe have moved away. But I think that they've also, some of the past books have talked about how the Wanderers have made peace with Ilario. So I'm guessing something's going to change in the future where perhaps we'll see them later as part of the Sylvaneth or something else.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm kind of glad that they left. There, I said it. All right. Mm-hmm. And this is coming from a guy who loves Wood Elves. Like, they're hands down my favorite Warhammer Fantasy. Not even close. They're absolutely far and away my favorite Warhammer Fantasy army. And yet I'm just kind of glad that it never really seemed like they made sense in Cities of Sigmar. It was just kind of a stand-in, tack on, also ran kind of thing. But like when you're talking about cities, like Wood Elves are the most like anathematic to that they are the opposite of cities.
I don't know. The living city, though.
Okay, that's one example and does not justify why an entire like half of them are tacked onto a faction. And so, if they're going to stick around, and honestly, I don't know that if they cut them entirely, I wouldn't even mind all that much because they're going to be an old world where they belong, which I will also have. So like it. Either find a better place for them or get rid of them entirely is where I stand.
And for me, my big mourning of the loss of the High Elves happened with the previous book.
Skycutter Chariots,
the Swifthawk Agents. I mean, I bought a bunch of those the month before. Or even just like the Eldritch Council, the Order Draconis, like... We already lost most of the High Elves. We kind of only had the Phoenix Guard left anyways. Mm-hmm. So,
right. And
they kind of only focus on Phoenicium narrative-wise. So honestly, it's not that much of a narrative loss.
Yeah, true.
That already happened.
Right.
In my eyes.
Right. Yeah.
Though I will say, of all of the Elven factions to stick around, the idea that I'll just call them Dark Elves. The idea that the Dark Elves stuck around I would have never have guessed that. Like, and I think maybe it's just they don't know what to do with them, or I don't know why they're clinging to them.
I think they're going to play a role in the future with Malarion because they even talk about how they're, they helped Cities of Sigmar. They helped Sigmar to reclaim the realms, and their only request was privacy. So they have their own like enclaves essentially, but nobody knows what their true motives are. So I'm thinking Malarion comes back with his faction. We might see some turmoil or something.
Yeah.
Loyalties,
I definitely bet that you're correct. I think that's probably true. But then did they need to still be in the book for that to like come to pass?
Oh, yeah, because we have no idea when Malarian's kind of popped up.
Yeah, that's the real answer. We don't know when that book is coming.
Right.
And I will say one other cool thing, and this may have already existed, but it's talking about some of those Darkling Coven soldiers, and I think it is the Executioners. They mention how like they might not even be elves; they might be like shadow demons wearing armor,
right?
And no one actually knows.
Hint.
So I think it's definitely leaning towards what Josh is saying of it being these. They're probably going to go over to Malarian.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, cool. Any other Elven thoughts, or we'll keep on keeping on.
Duarden.
All right, next let's talk about some Duarden. And to start us off, to prime the conversation, we had another question from a patron of the show. Thank you so much, JM Wormwood. Any new lore for the Duarden in the new Battletome? Focus is obviously on the humans this time around, but does the book go into any detail how the Duarden specifically fit into the Cities of Sigmar and Dawnbringer Crusades? Well, for the first part of the question, I think it hasn't really changed. It didn't change too much, the Duarden intersection with the Cities of Sigmar, right? Like,
no, I think they kind of they went into a little more detail again with this is what we send these certain dwarven engineers and people along with the Crusades for these reasons, and then they also talk about how certain groups of them will be the laborers, but they'll pick up their weapons and they'll fight, and they've got all their stuff in their barracks, and so they kind of gives a little bit more like city background in terms of the standing fortress armies, as well as what the dwarves do specifically when they're on the road. Same with the elves that travel with them. So I thought that was interesting. But I think one of the neat things is they mention the White Dwarf, and they mention, he was brought here. And also, there's Gunderson's running around, because they kind of point out, there's all these dwarves from the realm that was, and they're walking around as well as the god, and so they kind of mention that as bringing the history up to where we are in the present day.
Remind me, I can't remember. So from some of the other Dwarden Battletomes, which is to say like Fire Slayers and KO, there's been this like through line, this thread talking about, if not like literally a reunification of the Dwarden, it's more of, thematically or, sort of culturally, there's this rejoining of sort of Dwardenship throughout the mortal realms. Was there any even hint of that in this book at all, in any of the Dwarden sections?
Honestly, not really. Like the only time they bring up like Grommadol is just by saying, not Grommadol, Grungni, is when Grungni brings back Grommadol. So it's like, other than that, there's no mention of them being overarching. It does talk about them being like working with the cities to take back their old like mountain holds. And that's where their real like relationships are.
Okay.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
I guess I'm sort of surprised. It seemed as if it was an intentional seed in other books, and like this would have been a fine place to drop a sentence or two in there. But I guess I didn't write it. It ain't up to me, so that's fine. What else about the Dwarden? What else jumped out at you guys about these dudes?
One thing I really liked is like there's like a tiny little story on one of the sides of the pages of these Dwarden like walking through a settlement, and he like this Dwarden's thinking to himself like, oh, these humans, they don't fully understand what we've done, like what we've built. We built this like city for them. And then this little girl is like running around chasing him and thanking him for like everything he did. And he's like, whatever. And like shrugs her off, but you can tell he's kind of like smiling as he's walking away. Like, oh, okay. So they do like interact, and we have these personal connections.
Well, there's even a portion of the book where they just talk about how in the cities that have been around for a while, that the mixed races have been there for so long that the people don't even notice it anymore. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. Then there's only conflict for extreme perspective cases or something like that. But in general, like it's like nobody cares. You're walking down the street next to the elf or the dwarf or whatever else. Yes. Contrary
to what I just said about the Wanderers, I would have been really sad if the Dwarden had been pulled from this book. And I don't know why I feel one way about one or one way the other, but it seems as if, I don't know, just in my head, these Dwarden always made more sense, like with the cities, especially considering like how much the cities have like clearly relied on them in a very like physical way. And some of the other stuff just sort of jives with them. Like a gyrocopter makes sense to me to like be a support unit in a human-centric army. So maybe I just have competing priorities, but the Dwarden I think do belong here and fit much better, at least personally.
Well, and I think part of it narratively kind of ties to the connection between their deities. Like Grungni and Sigmar work together fairly closely. They built the Stormcast together, and Grungni kind of hangs out. He hangs out wherever he wants, but he shows up in his ear.
Yeah, and his Smiths work there. Continuously. Yeah.
Whereas like Sigmar and Alariel, they have like their agreement. They were part of a pantheon in the past, and they're gonna fight chaos together. But there's a reason the Sylvaneth aren't part of the Cities of Sigmar. Like they're not best friends.
Yeah. We're not best friends, we're just good friends.
Work acquaintances.
Yeah. They're allies.
Sure. Yeah. They don't have their full names in their contacts list in their cell phones. So like, and because of that, to sort of see the dichotomy between the Dwarden and the elves, it makes me then kind of sad for the elves, and that like it'd be nice if there was some version of elves that were sort of like I said before, like general
integrated,
like more like like Cities of Sigmar elves, as opposed to what I think is kind of attack on dark elf situation. Dwarden makes sense to me. Dark elves don't. So, which is to say, maybe one day, like these armies are always evolving. They will always be growing. I'm literally from a product perspective. Like GW will add more things to this, and so like maybe that's just next on the list.
Well, and I think part of that comes from like what you were saying before, that they needed to change the descriptions of the dark elves to be more general, but they're still dark elf flavored, whereas like the dispossessed, they're just like generic Dwarden flavor, and you can do anything you want with that, whereas you're starting with dark elves and have to work your way back from that to an extent.
And by no means do I think the dark elves, they look cool. That's a cool thing, like, but it's a distinct vibe. It's a very distinct image that the Dwarden are not that, like, as you just said. Other Dwarden thoughts? I know you're a Dwarden fan, Josh.
I am. No, I think we've covered most of it. They had some fun little tidbits in there, but yeah, describing male, female toward, and
True, with the braids as opposed to beards and stuff, but nobody ever knows.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's funny.
Nice. All right, how about a third race? One that I don't think have ever talked before as it relates to Cities of Sigmar, but we had some questions asking about ogres. What?
City ogres.
City ogres, no less. So let's start with a question from a patron of the show and also a local friend, Armoire Enthusiast 7. 1 through 6 was taken. Do they talk more about the ogres in or working with the cities? And so, listener, you may be baffled. What are you talking about? Ogres and the cities? Those two don't go together. Well, now they do. So how do we want to go about this? Do we talk about the universe, or do we just talk about the race broadly? Let's talk about the race.
Let's add Chrisling's question as well.
Yeah.
What does it tell us about city ogres? The same kind of question. What are the attitudes between city ogres and Maw tribe ogres like?
Yeah.
So now I think we can jump.
Yeah. Okay. So now, and we'll talk about just city ogres broadly. What did we learn about city ogres outside the fact that there's a new unit that involves the city ogre? Do we learn much new about them?
I think it doesn't explicitly say, but they're more common than I would have expected with it just being one unit. Mm-hmm. There's a neat little story from the perspective of a city ogre, which is neat. But he's talking about how he joined the military because he doesn't want to end up like his dad, who just doesn't move and eats all the time. So it means that there's these type of already multi-generational ogre families living in the cities. Mm-hmm. And you can see why they want to. They can eat all the food they want. They don't have to kill. They don't have to do any work. They can just go buy food.
Yeah. It's interesting because it talks about these as second generational.
Yeah.
It's hard to buy food without a job, though, Will. I think we can all attest to that.
If an ogre walks through and just starts grabbing food, no one's going to stop.
We're going to do anything.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. It's funny because it talks about him thinking his dad is going to, the tragedy is he might be thin. So no, it's the ogre's job to wander the realms and eat as much as they can and many different things as can. And being in the army is a way to do that.
Yeah, without getting too much, what does he call it? Swivelization.
Yes.
One of those parts.
Don't want to be civilized, I guess.
Yeah. I'm reminded of what we were talking about before, Josh, when you mentioned all the Skaven, right? So as part of the story, he's just mowing down waves and waves in Skaven, and he can hardly believe that the humies here have no interest in eating any of this stuff. And although he doesn't love it, but he can eat as much of it as he wants. So there's that.
Right.
So he's just chowing down on Skaven.
Yeah, that's fun. They kind of talk about how the process goes between the Fusilier Major and the ogre and how they develop that. Sometimes it's one saved the other, or sometimes they're trained together for a long time, but that it's bribery. You get to eat as much as you want, work with it, and how they train them, with 1 stomp, 2 stomps, meaning different things. And so I thought that was certainly an interesting perspective on what the relationship is. And they talk about how it was first developed and who first developed it. And they were just sitting on their shoulders trying to fight in this swamp to kill these crocodile things. And they're like, we could do something more with this.
Yeah.
But in the short story, the ogre is complaining about this pain in his back. Carrying this guy around.
But it seems as if it's just belly aching, and that they do have a certain I don't know relationship. And I like it at the very end where the ogre is eyeing the Skaven, and the guy on his back is all right, you know what? Go ahead, you've earned it. We can wait.
Yeah. So, we'll wait while you eat the Skaven. Yeah.
So he knows the score. That's fun.
Yeah. It doesn't really talk about any sort of perspectives of the city ogres versus Maw tribe, but I think the reference in terms of the ogre wanting to travel the realms to eat, as many different things, I think that just portrays the similarity between the two.
Yeah.
That they're just more willing to work with humans.
He speaks of the fear of getting thin, right? Which is funny because he very clearly is thinner. I mean, the model is very clearly thinner than the regular ogres, and so it's a good point to reference in the book, GW, because that's the first thing anybody who knows anything about ogres is going to notice. How do you guys feel about? I feel like maybe this has come up before in other episodes or other discussions, but how do you guys feel about the thin ogres?
So I like it with the caveat of it. Well, this is the second generation city thin ogre.
Okay.
Right.
Like if they take the same design and they say this is ogres now.
I know, and I don't know if it's really thin. I mean, it's wearing a lot of armor and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think they're big.
Oh yeah. Like if you, I haven't seen the models next to regular ogres yet.
Right.
I would assume
artwork. Yeah.
I assume it's just looking at the base and how like the scale size next to a normal human, and I'm looking at a normal ogre next to a normal human. I think it's probably like a bigger model.
Yeah.
But that's just because the current ogre models are so small.
Older.
Like
Great. Yeah, no, it definitely looks bigger.
I also want to put him next to, what's his face from Curse City?
Brutog, the Corpse Eater.
I'll take your word for it, sure.
Just because I'm using him as my conversion for one. He's sitting in front of me.
And I guess also next to the, what are they called? The Kostargi? The...
Oh, Kasargi.
Yeah, exactly. Because those are ogres too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, zombie ogres.
So those are all thin ogre versions. I want to see how they match up. Because if you're not going to match regular ogres, then at the very least, I need you to match skinny ogres. I mean, you can tell whenever I ask a question of what do you guys think about this? It's a leading question, and it's something I don't like. And here's an example of that. And then I'm not a big fan. I understand the realms are vast and varied, and there's all sorts of different things that live in them. And you can give me a very good reason to justify why something looks the way it looks. But like, I'm a pretty black and white kind of guy. I like my things being the way they're supposed to be. I like my ogres fat the way God intended. And so, like an ogre should be an ogre should be an ogre. And I feel that way about a bunch of different stuff in the movie.
He is working out often.
Yeah. And so I don't like things changing. I'm a, what is it, grognard in that regard. I don't like these newfangled thin ogres.
Yeah.
So there I said it. You can mark me down as thumbs down. So be it, though. They don't ask me. Let's see. What else we got? Any other ogre thoughts, feedback?
I didn't have anything else.
No, that's kind of... I mean, we just have the one ogre to talk about, so there's not a whole lot of information. I think the only other thing, it's like less even about the ogre, but I remember this popping up in the book of like the regular Fusiliers getting mad because the Fusil Major doesn't have to march, but they can't really complain because they have to complain to the ogre, and no one wants to do that.
Yeah, it won't go well.
Right.
All right, so then they wrap up our conversation about other races besides humans. We got another question. Surprise. Another one from Resident Sassmaster. They want to know, can we expect, perhaps from 4th edition, to move away from the non-human elements, or will there be instead having elves and Duarden more integrated within the human factions? And so I think, I'll paraphrase, do we think that the cities are going to continue to move away from those other races, or do you think it's just a matter of time before those other races get more integrated into what we know as Cities of Sigmar army? What do you guys think?
I think they had originally planned to move away. But after seeing all of the feedback when they first announced that this was going to be a human-centric release, they may be reconsidering and realizing they might make more money by integrating them more.
More money? Do you think they care about money, Will?
Gosh, no, they care about the story.
They care about the story.
But yeah, just because, like, I remember at Adepticon, they announced it, and like, yeah, and questions from the crowd. Like, so wait, so what's happening to Arden and elves? And you can see them, like, sweat on stage, like, next question.
Nothing.
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah. What the big
and,
look?
Like, you can see it in their, like, hype posts. It started off as, like, check out the new humans, the new human army, to just, like, hey, here's how Cities of Sigmar work. Like, when they even talked about the models being squatted, they were like, oh, and if you have a unit with a two-handed sword that's going away, you can use the elf two-handed sword model that's staying. Elves are staying, guys. So are Duarden. Are you happy?
Do you think it's damage control a little bit? That's
maybe not damage control, but
I hadn't
pivoting.
Sure. Oh,
yeah, I don't know, because I mean they make these things so far out, though. I do think that perhaps the reaction was not what they had expected. But I mean, I don't think they could have rewritten. Well, maybe they could. I don't know.
I don't think they rewrote anything for the book. Mm-hmm. But like you said, they worked so far out, so they're probably starting. Maybe
to think about it.
Started on the next one.
Gotcha.
Like, hey, write this down. Add some elves and add some dwarven.
Right.
Josh, what do you think? Do you think they're going away from other races, or do you think they'll circle back around to these other races at a later date?
I think it actually was kind of my maybe misplaced expectation that when this was coming out, that we would actually see like elven and dwarven models within like the steel helms, like an integrated force. I thought that would be an interesting change. Obviously you might still have your specialists, like the dwarven clans and the builders and you got the Ironweld. But I thought it would have been really interesting to have, we've got all these human models, but there are also the occasional elves and dwarves in the steel helms. So
kind of like how some Warcry warbands have, mixed race things, right?
Yeah.
And
I thought that would kind of show some of the integration that's happened over the hundreds of years that, that they talk about.
Yeah. I was hoping for that too.
Sure. I mean, that would have been, I think, best case scenario if they could have pulled that off. I think that they will circle, but regardless of what their intentions always were, I think they probably will find ways to integrate. And this is back to the conversation of like general, but like integrate general elf and general dwarven. And again, dwarven are pretty general, right? But the idea that like they could maybe serve as specialist units. They I don't think they'll ever take the spotlight. They'll never be, the front and center, but they'll just be sort of supplemental, just as a way to like show off, let the army do things that like you wouldn't expect, a human to just be able to do. Though at the same time, with the Wildercore, you've sort of already proven that we can dabble in like that specialist arena, like, right? They're the hunters, stealthy hunters, which is kind of typically an elven thing, not always, but it could be. So I don't think they have to, but I think they'd be smart if they did. To again, just sort of serve as supplemental, like add a little bit of wacky to the army. But then again, I just said that, and they're already doing a pretty good job adding wacky without using elves or dwarven.
It's wacky.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I could see how they wouldn't. Maybe it's the difference between a hope and an expectation, but I think they'll probably pad the army with more interesting races eventually. Fingers crossed, anyways.
Including some Gollum kind or other stuff too.
I think Cities of Sigmar has got the potential to be a particularly large, like, not bench, diverse. But like a large and diverse. Like some armies, some factions are just sort of destined to be particularly small ranges. I don't think that this has no limits. Like there's very few walls to sort of box this army in, and so because of that, I think they have a lot of opportunity to get creative with the things that they add, and they seem to want to do that more and more these days. So
and it's not like they need to add like a lot. They added one city ogre, and now like moving forward, people are just going to be fine with city ogres being a thing.
Yeah, true. Except for me.
Well, I think one of the interesting things, and I can't remember the original cities book. I think it just had 5 cities described in it, right? That you could play. Like different rules, but I can't remember if that's
true. It had a lot
7?
Because we lost Phoenicia. I think it was 7 because there were like the 3. I think there was more.
Because I know for Warcry we have 7, and it might have been 7 for the original, but this has 11 different cities. So I think it's definitely grown in terms of variety and the different characteristic narrative you can have around your city. So even if the diversity hasn't grown substantially, I think you just have more options in the terms of cities you can play now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think I'm counting 7 from our previous notes of last time.
That's what I think. That's why I think Warcry was 7, because it was based off that original set.
Was Hammerhall 1? Because I'm just looking at the cities that I've seen carry over, and I'm already seeing 8, and then there were 2 that got squatted.
Oh, so maybe Hammerhall was split.
Yeah, I think Hammerhall might have been 1, and then they split it.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know.
All right. Any other It's a loaded statement. Any other racial thoughts?
No, just that, like, we have the races that have, like, models and, like, actual lore entries, but they will call out, like, in specific city entries, like, some of the races that are unique to their, like, Hammerhall Actia has, like, it says, like, the most. Like, if it's an order race, you can find one in Hammerhall Actia, is essentially, like, what it's trying to describe.
The real melting pot.
Yeah. It'll state which are battle line, depending on who's leading it, that kind of stuff, just like the Battletomes do. Yes.
Yeah, true. All right, while we're talking about how, what it's like to sort of live and exist in these cities of Sigmar, let's talk about other walks of life. I don't know. I can't think of the term. So moving on, maybe we'll talk about the cults. Umberogan. How do you say that word? Umberogan.
Yeah, Umberogan is how I would say it.
Nice.
Yeah. I think so.
I don't know if it's right, but it's how I'm going to say it.
That's right.
If anybody asks, I'm going to tell them.
The three of us have agreed.
Yeah. So this is a newer thing, and I don't even know really where it came from. This new aspect.
I can fill it in after we get to the question.
Okay, sure. This new aspect of Sigmar worship. And so, I mean, over the years, we've talked about a wide range, and that's the beauty of the Mortal Realms and sort of how diverse it is and how depending on where you're from or what your culture is, how you look at Sigmar and how you see his embodiment in the realms at large. And so there's these broad, varied cults, and one of the newer ones that we've found here is this cult of the wheel. Do you want me to ask these questions, or do you want to do your thing first, Will?
Let's ask the question.
All right.
Just the first one, though, and then...
Perfect, we'll do. So to that end, hey, we got another question. Check this out. From Fredericks. They want to know just how prominent is the cult of the wheel really? And I like how he added really. So we have to tell the truth. Will, did you get any thoughts on that?
So it's become one of the main church they talk about in this book. Surprisingly enough, because we had never heard about it before. It was never an aspect of Sigmar as far as we've been aware of. He's got hammers, he's got thunder and lightning. But
he's got comets
he's got comets,
more than one tail, less than 3 though.
Somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And so this cult is really taken over. In the lore, it's taken over because it's the great wheel of progress and the marching of the Crusades. And since the Dawnbringers
time as well,
Wheel of Time. Meta narratively, though, and this is a shout out to Nuno who pointed this out to me when it was first announced. This might be based off of an existing real world thunder god named Taranis, Taranis.
He sounds nice.
Who was worshipped in pre-medieval Britain, also Ireland, Gaul, and areas of Germany related to Thor. So if you already thought that Sigmar was a Thor knockoff, he's now stealing the wheel motif from a different Thor knockoff, which I thought is a nice deep cut. If that's what they're going for, if you know what, there is a thunder god of Britain, and he has wheels. So we're adding wheels to our British thunder god.
Mm-hmm. Complete the set. All right, that's interesting. That's cool. And that makes a lot more sense because, frankly, the wheel never really jived with Sigmar for me up until this point. But I can see if it had outside influences, then that makes more sense to me. Okay, cool. Right on. Another question, if we're going to keep talking about cults, but Minerva's wanted to know what is the sense that we get. No, Aaron, read the question. What is the sense we get of the different religions in play, particularly diversity within the cults, Murogan? Because, like I said before, Sigmar can be worshipped in a wide range of things. Some people think he's a giant worm, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
What does the book go into or spend any time talking about the interplay between the different cults or the different interpretations of Sigmar? I'm trying to recall. Does it?
No, I mean, the first, the introductory paragraph that's under the sacred cults of Sigmar, it says the cults Umbergoin are manifold, each representing an aspect of the god king's greatness. So they all represent different aspects. From the blessed Fulgurians to the ascendant pilgrims of the Great Wheel, the conviction and readiness to fight is vital. It just says that there are so many of them, and it gives us this one particular example.
Yeah,
I gotcha. It's not in this book, but like when they were lighting people on fire in the Dawnbringers book, was that also due to a aspect of an interpretation of an aspect of Sigmar, right?
Yes, because it was like how a lightning bolt can start a fire.
Okay.
And they were just really into fire since they're in Akshi.
Sure, that tracks.
So I feel like they more like walked backwards into it. Like, okay, we like fire, right? And we worship Sigmar. How can we do that?
Light ourselves on fire.
Sigmar gets mad. It's like he has a fire in his eyes. So then, like, that's fire Sigmar. I like sunglasses Sigmar because he's cool.
Yeah.
Too cool. All right. So, yeah, I don't know that there's much interplay across the cults. Yeah. As far as diversity goes, I mean, if we're talking about other races, maybe the book mentions once or twice that the elves are Dward and like give due respect to Sigmar, but by no means are they like they're not always directly disciples of him per se. Though some very well could be, especially I think those who live in Azir are probably more likely to be. But yeah, I don't know that there's much interaction across the cults.
There's not in this book, and I think it's because this is more Dawnbringer focused, and the wheel is kind of like the big symbol of the Crusades. And I feel like that's why I was really hoping we were going to get some, because that other Cursed City priestess, whose name I can't remember, she was from the Cult of the Comet and had like a unique design aesthetic that we hadn't seen before, because we're used to all the lightning bolt stuff. It's like, oh, cool. Here's another cult. Maybe we'll see more. And we haven't yet.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a little statement at the bottom of this page. The wheel must often be oiled with blood. And I think it's totally related to the Crusades and how they're grinding out there to get and build new strong points, but people are dying. Progress must go on, so you continue to grind as the generations go through. So I think it's that everything's moving forward, whether that's good or bad. We're all moving forward. So I think that's the main focus of this particular cult, and tied with that, and the new character, of course.
Yeah. I moved some questions around. If we're talking about sort of interplay between cities or factions or what have you, Wes from the Discord had a similar question, in that they wanted to know: is there any political intrigue between cities or within the cities themselves? And so we're talking about the interplay between cults. We didn't see too much of it. Do we see much interplay between sort of the politics between cities or within the cities? Do we see much of that in this book at all?
They mentioned a little bit about Har-Koron. Amelgard was taken over, and then because of situations, there's this political agreement that nothing will happen yet. But it does talk about the Amelgard rebels, continually fighting with the Har-Koron occupants. So that's as far as I've seen.
The best political intrigue is civil war. So nice. Good call.
I think the only other interaction we have between cities is it does talk about the person in charge of the hammer halls, trying to find a way to balance that, having cities in one city in two realms. So I don't know if that's between cities, if you count them as two separate ones, or if it's the same city. But there is some political issues there.
Sure. I think a lot of this book, for better or worse, I would say better, is like we mentioned before, is very Dawnbringer focused, right? And so it's spending less time at home and more time focused on abroad. And so a lot of these sort of interplay between cities or cults or whatever would be sorts of things that would be part of deep dives in the cities themselves. And I don't know that that's necessarily the focus of this book, though it very well could be, right? There will be future Cities of Sigmar books as time goes on. And I wonder when the Dawnbringers isn't as much the focus of what's going on, I wonder if that's maybe a prime time, well, assuming any of the cities are still standing, but prime time to talk about that interplay between them.
And there is some internal city politics which also comes up to another listener question.
Tell me.
From patron Drake, which is there mention of dynamics between the Azerite and reclaimed Dawnbringers? And oh boy, especially in Hammerhall with our new named character, Talia Vedra. She is a reclaimed, like, marshal of Dawnbringer Crusades, and she just does a straight up coup in Hammerhall to make it more reclaimed focused instead of it being so Azerite focused. And
well, was that her intent? Was that her intended purpose?
No. Her intended purpose was to slay some fools.
I was going to say chop some heads off is what her goal was. Yeah.
What is it? She drops the greatest line that I just want to say, read out real quick. She kicks open a door and yells, "Time's up, you bickering scumbags," and then just starts cutting people.
I love it.
But they had good reason. There were 4 individuals who, and the story goes through it very well in terms of, they were corrupt and, trying to bring the downfall of the city in a variety of different ways. And she's later exonerated, shall we say, by the Lord, Lord Celestant, who promotes her to First Marshal of Hammerhall, actually. Yeah. But
it's Bastian Carthalos himself who showed up to do the very same thing she did, but just 2 minutes too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she, again, and talks about the, how their political connections could have delayed any trials for months to years. And so she, took matters into her own hands.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, very well done. Yeah, and it kind of touches on Minerva's question. Are there any development in the relationship between Stormcast and mortals, particularly in day-to-day non-battle sense? And it didn't give us a whole lot of perspective, but, the Stormcast seemed to be more, interacting, and there's an advisory sort of role. Even the one that was at the table kind of said, this is not appropriate, but didn't stop her from doing anything, so it's more, and some of the descriptions talk about them being there, supporting them, but being not part of the politics. So I think that kind of continues.
Well, and specifically with Talia and some of the reclaimed, it says they consider her, a controversial figure amongst her Stormcast allies because of her veiled disdain for the Azerites. She's like, I don't like Azerites. They all suck. Anyone from Azir sucks. And then looks directly at the people made out of the magic of Azir.
Yeah, if they had collars in their armor, they would tug on them at that point.
Oh, yeah. She assaults the one that's at the table too, saying that you've been reformed so many times. What's that? I can't remember the word. When they had to be remade because
reforged.
Reforged. Thank you. They've been reforged so many times that you don't remember your Axian soul, or So it was
you don't remember you were a Parcher. Is what she
right.
Yeah,
you used to be a Parcher. She's talking to what's his face, the Graham Ventus Firestrike, Magister.
And like you had said, Josh, he told her hey, we don't do that here, and her response is, well, you could have stopped me. You waited until I was done to say something.
He was done, and it really, I don't know. You without getting much Adventus Firestrike knowledge, you learn quite a bit about him, especially considering the fact that Carthalos was had to roll up after the fact, right? They're both Hammers of Sigmar. There's some sort of, Carthalos is the Lord Commander. That's what
Lord Commander.
Yeah.
Lord
So he's the head honcho, right? So he's coming up to essentially clean up Firestrike's, not his mess, but he had a dude sitting right there. But Carthalos was the one who was going to come and do it himself. So, I feel like for a guy who is nominally as important as Firestrike is, we still don't know much about him. But this gives you a glimpse in terms of the hierarchies and what his how active he is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of talks a bit more about the hierarchies of some of the different subgroups, because Carthalos specifically mentions he joined in because, quote, the Order of Azir has found.
Oh, true.
And we know the 2 members of the Order of Azir that found this from the Dawnbringers book. It's Callus and Toll.
Yeah.
So maybe they just don't answer to Aventus Firestrike, and they answer to their commanders who passed it to Bastian Carthalos, who just decided to deal with it himself.
Just Firestruck, what would you say you do around here?
Yeah. I think I get like 15 solid minutes of work done a day.
Despite all this conversation that we're having here, I think it is a good, they really pulled off the not overdoing talking about Stormcast in this book. I feel like it'd be very easy to like just pepper in Stormcast every which way, but like by no means they are not the star of this book, even though it's followers of Sigmar type thing, and they very much are a distant second, if that, in terms of focus of the things talked about in here. Which you say, obviously, Aaron, it's a cities book, but like I think it's probably hard to do, especially considering how Stormcast are the poster children for the whole setting, and so they did a great job to ensure that, I mean, for better or worse, humans are the focus of this thing. So kudos to them being able to pull it off. Yeah, there you go. Any other living at home type conversations as it relates to?
I think the only other component I can remember where they're talking about Azerite versus Reclaimed is when they talk about the Wildercore group. They talk about them being mostly reclaimed and joining the city and deciding they can't really handle the walls and the city life, and so they become they move out in the field and become the hunters and rangers sort of thing. So they still talk about the dynamic between the two, especially again, with this particular character and Akshi. But
one of the other things as far as like day-to-day life goes, I kind of mentioned before, they have like the 2-page, just beautiful art spread of like the kit a Dawnbringer has. And it does talk about like they call it the Vedra Reformation because of Talia Vedra. And it wasn't just that she like started taking over the Crusades and did the Castlite formation, but it's like ensuring people are properly given supplies, that the reclaimed are given the tools they need for success, which side note,
good boots, good armor, training, ammunition.
Actual boots, because in the old Empire models, especially with like the Free Guild Guard that we have, not every model had shoes on. Some of them were barefoot. So this is almost like the lore reason for why they have equipment.
All right.
And it also talks about like playing cards and like cigars and like tobacco and stuff.
Right.
In their supply crates that they can use.
I love how creative sometimes the writers get with justifying why things change in a Battletome or change for an army, and whether it's where did this new unit come from? It should have always existed, and they have to sort of jump around the fact that like, all right, well, this is why it wasn't here before, what have you. But this is an example of them having to justify. Well, all right, well, you had this army. Why did the look and feel change? Why did everybody get kitted out differently? Et cetera, et cetera. And so like, this is yet another example of them getting, coming up with a very clear story reason as to justifying why they're different. These reclaimed are now outfitted out correctly because someone went in and made it a point to, advocate for their folks. So I love when they do that. I'm sure it's not easy to do. And so kudos to them. If there's something new in a Battletome, I'm always looking forward to the justification for it. They're not always winners, but when they are winners, I'm for it.
I always wonder what the brainstorming sessions must look like. Be like one of those crazy, theories. There's papers and lines everywhere.
Or sometimes the demigryphs were just in the woods, and then they walked out.
They come out as gargoylians. Oh, look at this!
All right, cool. We had a couple questions touching on some topics I think we've talked about before, but I want to get the questions in so folks don't think we forgot. So RE Dawnbringers, Chrisling had some Dawnbringer questions. They wanted to know any examples of Dawnbringer crusades being infiltrated by chaos elements all the time, I'm sure. Were there any examples in the story though? Or in the book, I mean?
There's a lot of like hinting at it, but it's never like this crusade fell because of chaos, because we didn't get much look at any specific crusade. The focus has been a lot of like how crusades work.
Yeah.
But it does call out 2 examples with the named priestess of like, there are rumors that her power comes from something more nefarious than faith. Ooh. And the same thing with the alchemite war forgers. It's like some people say that messing with alchemy is the purview of the change god, and they might be right. So it's like, there's like a maybe.
or that they could easily fall.
Something like that.
Kind of thing.
Will, I like your speculation voice, and I want you to talk like that all the time. I think. So.
See, I should have done that for the story phase intro.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because they do talk about how the corn malice has gained such a level of recognition, that people put
pretty
so
sure
much
you just
faith
called
into
it corn malice, and I think a Freudian slip.
That is, whoops. That it's almost like this religious artifact now, because it can repel ghosts and stuff like that at certain points. So I think in that sense, there's probably not corrupted people wearing them. I think it's more like once a settlement is established or while they're being attacked along the way, then that introduces, a chance for chaos infiltration and other stuff like that. But I think not necessarily corrupted once they head out.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of makes sense. If you want to corrupt as many people as possible, you don't join the march that has a 30% success rate.
Right.
You wait until they succeed and then go over there.
Right.
Very true. Kristen got another question. They ask, what are the rewards of being a Dawnbringer Crusade? And I think the rewards are many. What are some rewards that you guys can think of? What would it take you to join a Dawnbringer Crusade? Well, those are two different questions, I guess.
Yeah.
What are some of the rewards they talk about?
So the rewards they talk about, like, one, if you join the Crusade, you kind of get like pardoned to an extent. We're not going to arrest this dude. He's going to go die on a crusade. So who cares? Mm-hmm. But the one that I think more people would go for is you get land.
Yep.
At the new city that is built if you're successful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a way for people to change their social status. Yeah, and that did come up in the Dominion novel. Is like, oh yeah, everyone's going to have these opportunities. But then he realized everyone who kind of already had money and power buddied up with the people in charge of the crusade so they would maintain having all their money and power. So it's like, oh, shoot.
I forgot about Dominion. That book we've been talking about Dawnbringer Crusades for so long. In my head, it's still like a very new development, but that was a while ago. Not deep cut, but just a long time ago cut. One reward, I guess you could call it, that is newer to me, I guess, is the sort of reclaimed desire to get their lands back, though, too. Like, sure, there's a personal goal, but like there's a certain baked in pride thing that you see a lot of where folks are just freaking out to like, revenge is another way to put it. Say, no, those are our lands. I will go get them back. And so it's, yes, and then I get land, to what you were saying, Will, but it's more of a taking back what is rightfully yours.
Right. Yeah.
Josh, did you have any other rewards that jumped out at you?
No. That's exactly what was. You guys mentioned it all already.
Oh, no, sorry.
Well, what about the one you would like to have? What would it take for Josh to go on Crusade?
There you go.
That's a tough one. I like to explore all the different things you get to see. But, probably, the land at the end of it, just having some place to call your own.
Will, what would it take you to go on a crusade?
Yeah, I mean, the land is a good one. I feel like I would need to have the personal connection. Like, if I'm just a dude who was raised in Hammerhall, I don't think I'd want to just leave Hammerhall unless it was, like, a lot of land. Mm-hmm. But if I'm, like, a dude who was in a small town who had to flee to Hammerhall and this is my chance to go back, I would go in I would do that for a lot less of like the monetary reward.
Oh, sure. Well, that's nice to hear. My answer is nothing. There's no, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for a second. I wouldn't even consider it. No. I'm busy that day. Sorry. Flat feet. All right. And then we talked about sort of the difference between the Castellite formation and whatever the opposite of that is.
They call it what? Fortress cities?
Oh, sure. But that's just
fortress city army.
That's just staying at home. That's just looking out your window. But Resident Sassmaster was asking, are there those who still don't use the new tactics, being the new tactic that Talia came up with. I guess you could say the Fortress City people aren't using the tactic because it's not like on the move.
Dwarden and elves don't use the new tactic.
Probably not.
Elves because they probably don't want to carry the heavy shield around, and Dwarden probably because they think their armor is better than the shield.
Very well could be. And I don't know if this is true, but they don't probably want to use a tactic come up that has been devised by like a puny human. They can do so much better than that. Well, that's me editorializing though. Yeah,
and funnily enough, the book does say someone who doesn't want everyone to be using this tactic, and that's Talia Vedra.
Right. Yeah. She says this works here. It's not always going to work in other realms, in other places. They didn't care. They said, "Oh, it's great. We're going to do it
anyway." They probably realized wooden shields are cheaper than metal shields, and they were like, "God."
Sure.
At least, I guess in Gairan and Shaman, metal shields would be cheaper.
Right. And probably lighter. And different metals.
Did you guys get the sense, or did I make this up, or did I like read between lines that aren't there, that broadly speaking, that the Fortress City formation really contained a lot of just like the old models, like it was just old stuff,
yes,
and the Castellet formation predominantly was made up of new stuff?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't looking for like artificial divisions that like weren't there.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that was definitely one of the distinctions they've made.
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning of like this feels like the Dawnbringer Crusade book, because that's what the new models are, and it's like
it's the focus. Yeah.
It's like we still acknowledge the Fortress City, the former pure Cities of Sigmar. Like those still exist. They still all of those units are still here, but we're going to talk about the Crusades because they're the new hotness.
Yeah. Makes for a more interesting book, though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, hey, speaking of the new hotness, you guys want to talk about some new stuff, new units, possibly?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, we got a handful. We probably won't touch on all of them, but I'd love to hear some of your favorites. What are some of the new things in the book that you guys were really digging? In no particular order. First come, first serve.
I like the Alchemite Warforger. As the model looks really cool, and then reading the description of it in the book, I thought was fascinating how they've, the dwarves have helped them build this cauldron, and they're using, of course, gold magic, to kind of pull these relic cubes out and change, the armor of the units they're supporting and hurting the units that they're fighting against. And I thought that was a really interesting. We've known about gold wizards and things like that, but it's an interesting way to have it incorporated, and I think the model looks fantastic.
I agree. Is there a battle? There's not like a battle mage for Chaman currently, right? Like specifically made for.
No, not really.
I wonder if this
this is kind of the first iteration of that.
And to that end, I wonder if they'll do over the years, if they'll do like more, not just like battle mage, a bright wizard or something like that, but like something that is uniquely, specifically from Akshi or from Hish or whatever, in the same way that this guy is a metal wizard, because that's way more interesting than just like robed bearded dude with staff. Like having him be like this bespoke thing is pretty cool. I'd love to see more of him.
Yeah, because you can have a battle mage of Shaman still. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can still have your robed wizard, but you're right. Like this is way cooler looking.
Sure. Yeah.
And specific.
Yeah. And I think it's the first model we've had of one. I think we've got wizards represented from a lot of the other lores of Magic.
So what's one of your fave new things?
I'm gonna say I have a few, but I'm just gonna start off with the Free Guild Steel Helms. Mm-hmm. They just have a really cool, unique design, and I feel like when you change the design of the base level human unit, you kind of change a lot of the themes of the setting, because now we know what humans look like, and I think it's a really cool look. But mostly I wanted to call out the fact that every unit has a battle priest. Mm-hmm. So it's not just your standard bearer, your champion, and a musician. These are people so guided by faith that there is a priest. Every 10th man is a priest.
Yep.
And I think
they do have a standard bearer.
Yeah. And they do have a standard bearer, yes.
And a leader too, don't they? They have a leader in arms too.
They just replace music with prayer.
I was just gonna say, does it take the place for the musician kind of?
But I think it really highlights the themes of like these are crusades, so they're going to be priests since it is inherently like a type of religious endeavor.
Yeah,
or that they need faith to get them through it because it's so trying.
Yeah. And then also it gives them like cooler rules than just being humans with sword. It's like they use that faith like in their war scroll, like to help them do stuff. And I think that's a cool little bit of flavor they have.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree.
How about you, Aaron?
I think my faves are probably the Wildercore.
Yep.
I say Wildercore.
Wildercore, like wildebeest. No,
Yeah.
that's not how you say that. But these are my faves. So first of all, are we led to believe that these are a Warcry warband?
Yep, they are.
Gotcha.
Yep.
They had the Warcry symbol on like the announcement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Actually, technically, they had the Underworld symbol during the stream.
I saw that.
But their social media used Warcry.
Sure. Regardless, though, I think they're pretty. If for no other reason, they're probably the closest thing to wood elves that are in the range. But it's some hunters that sort of serve as scouts and stealthy reconnaissance folks out in the woods. They are reclaimed. I think we touched on a lot of what makes them stand out in order. Yeah, but they have dogs that are really good at sniffing weird stuff out. I think, what do they say? They're good at also like sniffing out, like maybe it was undead or demons or something like that. But the point is like the supernatural. These dogs have been trained to like give their masters like a heads up, and they can't sleep in regular beds anymore, so they need to be out in the wood. Not anymore in the first place. They need to be out in the woods. And so I don't know, it's such a uniquely reclaimed thing. Like it really highlights the difference between, I don't want to say civilized and not civilized. That's the wrong way to look at it. But
Azerites.
Yeah, they're Azerian versus reclaimed side. And so I would love to see more units or just depictions of sort of that dichotomy between the two, because it really highlights the difference. And I think that's just a fun bit of lore. So they look really cool too. I will definitely be picking them up. I wonder if they'll be part. Because we don't know yet, I guess, if they'll be part of like a box, like a lot of the more.
I think so.
Warcry.
Yeah, I suspect the Crew Boys and the Wildercore, I think they previewed. So I'm guessing they come together in some sort of box.
So actually, not to rain on the parade, they did show like their release like time like roadmap, and it did show like Order and Destruction being separate boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Instead of one big box. So I think they're going to come out at the same time, but I don't think we're going to get like a Sundered Fate box.
Gotcha.
Okay. But those are my favorite types of boxes, though.
I know, because they're good terrain.
But they're more expensive.
Yes.
What's money? I mean, you can't take it with you. I want to spend my last penny the day that I die. That was weird. All right, let's keep on going, because it sounds like you guys got more. What other favorites jumped out?
The Command Core.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's so cool.
I mean, it's hard not to. There's so many really cool things in this Command Core. The fact of all, they've added like this HQ unit. But it's amazing stuff in here.
Yeah. What are some of your favorites in that core? Because it's a varied.
The Arch Knights look really cool. They're like the bodyguards of the marshals.
I really like the Soul Shepherd and the Corpus Somni.
Right.
When I first saw this, I thought it was a ghoul, because the Soul Shepherd is basically like, I don't know if he's a wizard, if he's a priest, but he's someone who...
He's a priest, yeah.
Okay. He can guide your soul, and in Lethis, they take it to Morta. And I don't know if that's how all Soul Shepherds work, but he basically makes it so Nagash can't get your soul. And he's got this cool little, like, zombie-looking dude with a flute
thing
playing music. And it's just such a cool little thing to add.
And they described the Corpus, or was it Somni, as it makes this piping noise, but you only hear it when you're dead, and so it's supposed to help guide the souls to the Soul Shepherd, so he can capture them or guide them to the right place. So that's kind of interesting. It just helps guide the souls away from Nagash.
Yeah. Well, and it even says like undead creatures shy away from these guys. So like, if you're in Shyish on a crusade, I can just imagine like people like slowly inching closer and closer to him as like the march goes on.
Right. We know we'll be safer here.
One aspect of this command core has prompted a listener question.
Yes.
Patron of the show, Armor Enthusiast 7, again, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. They ask, do they expand on the Gargoylians? Man, I'm having a hard time tonight. More than we have seen in the article on Warcom? And if so, which ones look or sound the most interesting or cool? I didn't read the Warcom article, so I don't know if this is more or less than what was in that article. Do you guys know?
Slightly more, not much.
Well, what was in the Warcom article / the book?
The Warcom article mentions that they are kind of related to incarnates, brought about by the right of life that Lariel did, and that they're like the realms made manifest that search out people of faith. And the book has all of that, but the book also includes notes of like, well, they are mascots for certain units, and they really are the realms trying to cleanse themselves. So it's almost like approval from the realms themselves for these crusades and fighting back the undead and chaos. And it even goes as far as mentioning that these little dudes will take on a bloodthirster head on if no one stops them.
Yeah.
They won't win, but they'll go for it.
Yeah, they hate chaos so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like the model in this unit looks like a lizard dog type thing. But we know that Gargoylians, I think I got it right. They come in varied shape and sizes. So we've got the dog-sized ones, but a lot of units just have like, it looks like a fish with legs on their base, or one is like a tiny head with legs.
Right.
Or there's a snail with legs. They just put legs on things, is what I'm realizing.
There's like the duck-billed platypus, but with a tiny ridge.
So many ways. Yeah.
And a tongue. Very cool. So which one's your favorite? We'll go around the horn.
I'm going to go with the snail with legs.
Sure.
Just because my mind immediately went to like, okay, if these are mascots for units, and there's a snail with legs, there's a unit out there that's like the 27th running snails, and they have the running snail on their banner. They have a slogan. They like paint up all their shields to be running, like just a little snail themed unit of steel helms.
I think the snail has shoes. Where did he get shoes from?
Right, like it.
The steel helms are going to help support the little guys.
I guess.
Yeah.
What shoes though? Josh, what's your favorite gargoyle?
I've got to go with the fish with the legs because it for me it totally looks like some of the imagery in the old Mordheim book, and some of the banners, they come around the pages of the book. There was fish with legs on those, and it's totally, I think, a reference to that.
All right. I like the little tonguey dude, the platypus guy with his tongue sticking out. I think he's my favorite for no other reason than like I think he's down to party.
And I know this wasn't a question, but the least cool is the tiny head man. I don't know why. He gives off vibes that tell me he deserves to be in jail for his crimes. He just looks guilty.
I don't know what that one looks like. I gotta find him.
That's funny.
It's like if you ever see like someone wearing a coat, like in fantasy, with like a high leather.
I don't like that guy at all.
Like he looks weird. He's like wearing
creepy.
He's wearing clothes for some reason, but he's just a head. Mm-hmm. I don't like it.
I hope Running Snail Man runs him through. Get out of here.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong here. Also the lizard dog guy, he's pretty legit too. I know. It's kind of lame picking like the main one, but he's still pretty neat. All right, let's keep it going. What else we got? Any other favorite new units? Keep them coming.
Oh, well, obviously the Fusel Major on Orc Warhulk is pretty sweet. The model is fun.
Yeah,
definitely think having the person being carried around by an ogre is certainly going to be an interesting centerpiece in the line.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I respect the audacity, even if I don't necessarily. I don't dislike it, but it's not my fave. but I do love that they really took a big swing. So kudos to them.
Yeah. It's not a specific unit, but one thing I love is the Free Guild Marshal with Relic Envoy.
Yeah.
I just like the Relic Envoy because it's like a kid, like a mid-teenager just by the looks of it. And then the Fusiliers also have like a kid carrying ammo. So I think the sculptors are finally confident enough that they can do like different ages of models. And they're kind of showing like this is the new, young, bright Crusades, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed going out. Oh, wait, no, we have kids in this war. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it says every man, woman, and child has to put in and do everything, building stuff, supporting, defending. Yeah.
All right. Any other faves? We're going to keep going.
Nope.
All right. Speaking of favorite things, we talked about how there's a lot more cities sort of highlighted in this book, and it's kind of a non sequitur, but here we are. I'd be curious to know, we definitely aren't going to go through all of them, but I'd love to know, like, of the, what did we say, 11? Yeah, it looks like it. Of the 11 cities,
11.
Which one is your favorite? That's an Aaron question. That's an Aaron listener question for you guys. Favorite City of Sigmar highlighted in this book? Hey, Josh, you go first this time. What's your fave?
It's tough. It's tough. I've always been a fan of Living City just because I like I had Sylvaneth for a while, and I think that the idea there is interesting. But I think I learned a lot more about Lethis in this book, and it kind of grasped, I thought it was very interesting. And so I'll probably pick that over as my favorite, although Misthaven is a close second.
Yeah, Misthaven's pretty cool too.
What about Lethis stood out to you?
Well, I think it was, I first learned about it when it was talking about, that it was a storm vault and it got busted open. But I think it's the fact that Mordra, the goddess or god, I can't remember if it's a goddess or god, but is still alive. Had been hinted at in one of the previous books, and this evidence is here. It's like, oh, okay, they're actually keeping this god alive, and it's protecting them. And they've also got they've made these amulets and things that actually protect people. They weren't sure they would, but they found ways to fight the Night Haunts and other stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of interesting aspects to them living in Shaiish, surrounded with everything Nagash has got going on and still persevering.
Yeah, it's a great example of a city that like adapted to the realm around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
agreed. Hey, well, what's your favorite City of Sigmar?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to go with Greywater Fastness that existed before. And I kind of said the thing about Lethis being good at adapting, because Greywater Fastness I love because it's the exact opposite. Yeah. Almost every other city talks about like how they learn to like work with the realm and like use the realm to their advantage. And Greywater Fastness is, we're in the realm of life, but we're going to shoot everything, and they're like corrupting the land around them. Polluting. They created a ghoul mare. Like they're at war with the Sylvaneth, sort of like there's peace. The Sylvaneth will allow traders to go in and out. But other than that, like if you step out of line, the Sylvaneth will kill you. And then on top of that, a lot of like the Cog Fort and Cog City stuff is tied to Greywater Fastness in this book. Mm-hmm. And that's where I kind of want the cities to go in the future. I was hoping it was this book, but it was not. So yeah, I just like that idea of the steam tanks, and now they have golem mercenaries, the copters and everything. Like I like that there's an HQ where all of that is kind of being pushed forward narratively.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm going to go with. This isn't even necessarily my favorite. I'm cheating here, but I have always had a spot in my heart for Excelsis, despite the fact that I think one of the coolest aspects of the cities of Sigmar is how they take on the characteristics of the realm that they are in. Oftentimes, not always, but many of them do, especially the ones that aren't in Akshi or Gyran. I feel like they end up being a little bit more unique in their own right, but not necessarily unique related to the realm that they're in. for the most part. However, Excelsis is another example of that, in that it is the hallmark city in Gur, but it's not necessarily all that Gur-like. The thing that really stands out about Excelsis is the fact that it's got the Spear of Malice in it, and there are all sorts of like prophecies and glimmerlings and stuff like that, which I'm sure we've talked about at length. So it would be cooler if it was more Gur-like, but it isn't. However, the thing I like about it is relatively meta, in that I don't know what the goal for Excelsis was, way back in 2015 or 2016, but it really feels like Nick Horst put Excelsis on the map with that City of Secrets book, and from there it seems like it's really evolved into such like a poster, like a banner City of Sigmar at this point. So much has happened there. It's proven to be so important, and I never would have predicted that that would be the case from sort of where it started. It was borderline destroyed for the first time in that novella that was written, and I really like to see how it sort of came up in the world and ended up being such like an important place. So much so that like the end of Broken Realms really hinged on Excelsis, and so I don't know, just to see more so than almost. I'm sure people could prove me wrong, but more so, I guess Ambelgard would be a great example. But as far as terms of cities that have evolved and that have had a storied history that we've watched with our own eyes, I think really is what made Excelsis stand out to me. So that's what I like about it. Any other, we won't spend too much time, but any other notes, things that really you can't help but say about some of the other cities that we really want to bring up?
Just that, like, there's more cities in this book than the previous book, but there's not any new cities, because we've got things like Lethis was added in Forbidden Power, Excelsis, Settlers Gain, Misthaven, they were all added in the Broken Realm series. But it is nice to see them like not treated as like outside cities, but they are a part of like that core group now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
One, I love that every city or every realm but Azir has now a city, like, which I think is important. Like that's I think vital. So kudos to them. Neat. All right, this is where we talk about next. We talk about special characters. I think we've talked at length about Talia. Is there anything we're missing other than her Manticore's sweet name, which I don't have in front of me? It's awesome though. What is it?
Infernadine.
Right.
Infernadine.
Cool Manticore name.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
We talked about her at length. The one thing the book doesn't say that I really wish it did is say exactly where she's from, because it says she's from the Parch and she was a reclaimed mercenary.
Yeah.
Who then sort of took over the Crusades.
Mm-hmm.
The book also calls out the city of Edessa, which has existed for a while, and there are the lionesses of Edessa. And we have the lioness of the Parch, and the book just won't tell me that she is from there directly. I just wanted it to be like, originally from Edessa, she now like.
Right. Can I just tell you right now? Would that be okay if I told you that right now?
I'll accept it.
All right, nice, perfect. Any other Talia facts that we haven't?
I thought it was interesting. The Manticore has feathered wings instead of bat wings. Because typically, you see them in art, with bat wings.
Yeah,
it still looks awesome.
I think it's them differentiating Chaos Manticores from non-Chaos Manticores, maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah, it seems nicer, I guess.
Yeah.
Besides, the scorpion tail and all that, but so be it. She's got a cool friend. She's got a friend on the council too. Who I'm looking for the name real quick.
Catrice Le Guerlain.
Yeah, right. So she's got backup.
And then also, I can't think of it, but the Spy Master who appeared in the short story.
Zane Dolorius, the hidden hand. He just inclines his mask and wags a finger. Don't try it.
He's friends with Callus and Toll as well. So
good. Well, good. He keeps good company, that's for sure. A special character we have not talked about, which we really ought to, is Pontifex Zenestra, the matriarch of the Great Wheel. Listeners, you'll remember that whole religion we were talking about, the cults of the Great Wheel. It has a matriarch, a pontifex, and that's this Zenestra. What do you guys know about this sassy lady?
Yeah, I know that her model is just like like a cool little throne, just like on a bunch of wheels. She's rolling it. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me look at this. Oh, no, she loves wheels so much, she doesn't use them.
No, there's just a couple wheels in the decoration, but like very few wheels on this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, to see the sacred emblem besmirched by mud and filth would not do it all.
God, no. So instead, she'd rather have, I think they call them, I don't know, they're polite in saying, thick boys or ladies, I think too, carrying her around.
Yeah, and they last a month before they turn old and die, and then she has to have new ones. Yeah.
Which is great because it shows there's so many different head options for the people carrying it. So you could like magnetize them and then just like swap the heads between games. Show that it's new people.
Yeah.
Right.
So she loves wheels. She's incredibly powerful, and she's also incredibly old. Like she was a great grandma, like when the Realm Gate Wars happened, and everybody's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like she shouldn't be this old, or she shouldn't still be alive. That is, like Aqua Garanis, which I think recently we've discovered keeps people alive for a long time. I feel like that's a relatively recent development, but even that's not enough to explain why she's still out there kicking it.
Although she was supposedly touched by Galmaraz.
Oh,
that might be why he's blessed her in some way.
Or she's the changeling.
Or she's got some other like sneaky stuff going on, right? That's what Will was saying before, that like speculation as to like what's going on with her.
Yeah, because it says like there have been times where she's been just like straight up shot and like was fine, or hit by Skaven assassins and walked it off. But she carries a skeleton on the like backside of her little throne, sitting the opposite direction, that has all the same scars as her. And as a friend of the show, Martin Orlando, has said, he just has asked, not as a question for the show, but just in general, asked, like, is she just Dorian Gray?
Yeah, totally.
Which I think so, yeah.
And the skeleton's awesome, by the way. Like, that's a particularly interesting part of her model.
Yeah.
She's pretty baller. I'm into her. Not like that. Well, maybe like that. It's tough to say. Any other Pontifex Zenestra thoughts?
Just that she doesn't walk the walk. She has someone else walk the walk for her. But when she does talk the talk, like it does, like she has such divine power that it does like help people. So she's not just
Palanquin will explode with lightning around it and
like spokes from a wheel or something like that. I think it was
exactly.
Yeah. So it's not just like she's just like this figurehead who's like serving a role in the cities. She actually is out there like doing things and is wielding this immense power.
Yeah, and I think that kind of represents like she is obviously blessed by Sigmar because she's wielding lightning and everything else, and it destroys evil. So is she corrupt? Is she not? Is there something else going on? You know.
One big misunderstanding, that's for sure.
Right.
Right, cool. Any other? And we sort of talked about the witch hunters, which I think are the only other names in this book. Maybe I'm wrong. Are there any other special characters that folks want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. Which is weird because the rules like will call out like, oh, this applies to named Dwarden units, but there aren't any. So I'm
yet
confused. Yeah, yet, and I'm just like, okay,
Gotrek or the White Dwarf.
Oh, true, but he wouldn't get like faction abilities.
Oh, I didn't look at the rules, so I have no idea. But
yeah.
Still, that's not. How could anyone forget about Gotrek?
True.
All right. Well, in that case, maybe we'll ask a couple more questions, just a little bit longer, guys. We're almost done. Just a few. Here's one from Chrisling. They want to know. Man, it's breaking my little heart. They want to know, how's my cousin in Anvilgard doing? Are they well? They didn't reply to the last letter I sent them. Chrisling, Anvilgard is mentioned, or rather Harkiron, but just insofar as that the sort of, there's I guess a ceasefire kind of, or rather Sigmar's not doing anything about his city getting stolen like a punk. And there's still probably, infighting there. I believe it mentions, or
Marathi's
we know about it.
Units are hunting down the rebels that remain.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because even when Marathi took it in Broken Realms, like Harkiron got its own City of Sigmar like section.
Yes.
And now they've just done away with that. Like now it's no longer resembling anything like a City of Sigmar.
Right.
I'm kind of wondering what their plan is.
Daughters of Cain.
Yeah. Was this the end goal? Like, is this as far as they plan on taking it, or is there like more to that story? I wonder, or is it a classic? They'll pick it up when they feel like it. Probably.
I think it's a pick it up when they feel like it.
I think it was the whole making her a goddess.
Oh, sure. I guess maybe the city was like after the goddess thing, right? So like, it was not tangential, but like supplemental. It was an epilogue towards that storyline. And is this just
right? Maybe
is this specifically the status quo? Just this now, like infighting and like the or I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll find out in due time.
Maybe it'll be a box game. The Rebels of Vanguard.
No, see, I was hoping that's where like Warcry would go to, like gangs of Vanguard.
It could be it'd be a great setting. Absolutely.
Also, as to why your cousin didn't reply to your letter, you do need to change the mailing address to Har Huron instead of Vanguard.
Sure.
So that's probably the only reason. They're probably fine.
You'll get a return to sender in probably 6 to 8 weeks, and then you'll be able to rectify it then. All right, another question. Our more enthusiast patron of the show, they want to know, what city would you live in? And then I forgot what they're doing here. Now I remember. Which city would you visit? And which would you destroy? He wants to know if we F, marry, kill a city. So I know we talked about our favorites. We'll do it real quick. There's no wrong answers. Live in, visit, destroy. Will you go first?
Okay. Oddly enough, live in is not going to be my favorite because Greywater Fastness probably sucks to live in.
Yeah, no thank you.
I would probably want to live in Settlers Gain because it seems like the most peaceful city, so to speak. In order for something to mess with you, they have to go through the Lumineth. So that's where I want to live.
Yeah, but what if the Lumineth are going to mess with you, though? I mean,
they will. Yeah.
True. Very true. I mean, if they take me to the tower to make me more smart, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Brainwashing.
Visit. I'm going to go to Tempest Eye. I just think the view from up there has got to be amazing. Just looking down from the mountains on top of everything. And then destroy. It's a tough one. I'm going to say only Hammerhall Gyra.
What?
Not the Akshi side. I only say that because I feel like Hammerhall Gyra and Living City have too much in common.
Do you want to eat?
Yeah, true.
You just start with the whole.
Fine. I'll switch it to the Living City.
Okay.
I just feel like they're too similar and they both shouldn't exist.
It's not going to be living no more, that's for sure. All right, Josh, what's your live, visit, destroy?
So I think I would live in the Living City myself. And
it's right there in the name, yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I'd probably visit Excelsis just to see the Spear of Malice, and what the hell the renovations are coming. And if I was going to destroy anything, maybe Vindicarum, because it was almost destroyed already.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty cool. It'd be easiest, yeah.
They've been through enough already.
Vindictive and Vindicarum. All right. Where would I live? I'd live in Hammerhall Gyra. It seems like between there and actually I'd be as far away I could get myself as far away from the walls as possible. Protected at the heart of a city. If I was going to visit somewhere, I'd visit Hammerhall Aksha because that seems like the safest place to travel to. Like that journey is the safest journey, probably. And if I were to destroy one, I would destroy Greywater Fastness because how dare they? I mean, first of all, how dare they? It seems as if from the outside looking in, it's already borderline destroyed anyways.
From an aerial view, it looks like ruins.
It doesn't look great. All right, let's keep them going. So this is the first question from Domir, patron of the show. Domir, thank you very much. They ask, what kind of city, or what is a kind of city you'd like to see? So what's a city that's missing out there that you'd like to see? They follow up with another question saying, with the cities that exist across two realms, namely Hammerhall, what is a realm combination that you think would be the most interesting? So 2 answers here I'm looking for. What kind of city would you like to see? Dream one up for me. And then pick 2 realms that would make for an interesting duo city across realms. This time it's now Josh has to go first. Sorry.
I was just thinking it might be really cool. I haven't heard about it yet. Is a city that would combine elements of Gairan and Shaman. Then you can have these really neat alchemical processes where you've got unique plants, but also the minerals and the and the particular, Aqua Goranus and the mercurial element of Shaman, to do all sorts of interesting magic.
Right on. And that's very very Mirrodin, like that's Magic the Gathering setting. Will, what type of city would you like to see, and or what realm combination would you like to see between two cities?
So type of city I would like to see is a city that like isn't afraid to work with aspects of other Grand Alliances. So something like what Ulfenkarn was before Radikar showed up, where like mortals and the undead kind of lived together to a certain extent, or something like a city that pairs with like destruction a little bit, maybe like a city with more ogres, or maybe a city with some Oryx in it, which also oddly enough in the Cursed City novel there are Oryx living in Ulfenkarn, so that's pretty cool. So maybe just Ulfenkarn is the city I'd like to see.
You just
right.
Bring that
Sounds
back.
like it.
Yeah. And then a city across two realms. One, I think anything paired with Gur would be super cool. But I'm thinking like Shaman and Gur. So you just have like almost giant monsters, just like fully plated with armor and with sort of like how the people are on being carried by the Ogor War Hulk with the Fusel Major. Just having like those on top of like a Stonehorn fully plated or something. Mm-hmm. Just combining the industrial aspects with the giant monsters.
Mm-hmm. Sure, that's cool. All right, a city I'd like to see. I would like to see a smaller Azirian city, which is to say, I feel like a lot of the big name Azirian cities we do not spend very much time. In fact, I'd like to also see those ones too, but those sort of exist already. So I want to see what it is. What does a suburb look like in Azir? What is like? I mean, maybe a village. I mean, again, we're losing the definition of city, I suppose. But in that, like, what does it look like to live in Azir but not be in one of those big major capital, like megapolis, like urban settings? Because I think that's where you would get the most Azirian-ness. That's not a word. The most like what it means to be a resident of Azir, but not so tied to like again. Azerheim or wherever else, or it's not like a like a college town is so very much tied to the college as opposed to that sort of thing. So what does Azir look like when you're not like within eye shot of Sigmar or wherever he is? I'd be interested to see that.
Rural Azir.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Yeah. And then in terms of two realms, I think any two realms that are a series of opposites would make for the most interesting combination. So if you're doing like a light for death, if we're light or shadow, I guess kind of what you were saying, like Shaman and Gur possibly. I don't know if there's any other opposites. What's fire and something? Anyways, so if you get the juxtapositions between those two opposite realms, I think would make for the most interesting. I don't know what that manifests as. I don't know what it ends up looking like, but it's not. I'm not the writer here, so I don't have to pick.
I'm surprised you didn't go with something that was like paired with Azir.
Oh, yeah, true. With my initial answer, true.
Yeah, to have something where it's like, oh, they're kind of Azerite, but they also kind of live in like Ghyran, and like seeing those two cultures like merge together. And
what you see a lot of is like Azirian's impact on a city and all those other realms. Like what is like an Azirian think of this this place, but you very rarely get to see what a Axian thinks of, or like how Axian would affect an Azirian city, right? Like what would their impact be if they were to go the other way, which I guess is essentially what it would have been the early days when Sigmar closed up all his gates, during Age of Chaos, right? Like how did that affect the makeup of what Azir looked like at that time, right? It was probably one thing and then became, at least for a while, a different thing, as there's sort of this influx of all these different cultures in Azir, which I bet you the people living there, it's almost like the opposite, right? Like it's right now all the reclaimed are sort of bristling at the fact that the Azirians are sort of shown up at their doorstep, but it was the exact opposite back then. All the Azirians had these like the unwashed masses come into their house. What was that like? Probably not great. Next. Oh, okay. And let's say this will be the last of the listener questions, at least as far as I can tell. Question from Abracadabra. Kadabadan. That's a fun one. Good job, my friend. I think also first time question asker. They ask, which city has the most tasty street food? What do you guys?
I say Excelsis, probably.
Could be pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Will?
I think a tie between Excelsis or Hammerhall Aksha, just because all the street food is going to be like cooked almost instantly, just with the heat.
Spicy.
And get something nice and hot no matter where you go.
Sure. I bet you Lethis does not have very good street food. Probably a lot of fish, though, right? It's on a lake. So, could be worse, I guess. All right. Those are questions that others have asked us. My question for you guys. Do you have any Black Library examples for those listeners who are hooked on these Cities of Sigmar and they want to dig deep into the Black Library library? That's redundant. To read more about their favorite faction, which is Cities of Sigmar. What are some books or stories from Black Library that you folks would recommend for the Cities of Sigmar fan?
So, funnily enough, when you all did the episode on this book, it wasn't given big recommendations, but I'm going to say Dominion, just because it shows us a Dawnbringer crusade from start to finish. And it, like a lot of those personal level things we were saying was really good about this Battletome. That novel has a lot of that as well.
Yeah, true.
Which, I mean, it's a novel, it's going to have more of that, but you can see how, like, I almost feel like he definitely knew what was going to be in this Battletome a little bit when he wrote that, just because there are a good amount of similarities.
Gotcha.
Over time, I think I've softened on that book a little bit. I think there's some things that I didn't like about it, but the things that I was maybe neutral on, I think in hindsight were perfectly fine. And maybe even
I think it was just like people didn't like the main character, and that's always hard to do that with a book when you don't like the main character.
Yeah, quite possibly. Josh, any Black Library recommendations?
So I liked Hammerhall and other stories, but also City of Secrets, which you mentioned before. I thought was a really fun book. Kind of talks about Excelsis in particular, but
also good. Hammerhall and other stories was by Josh. The Hammerhall part was by Josh Reynolds, and City Secrets was by Nick Horth. I think both of them were discussed on the Moral Realms story phase. So if y'all listeners can take a look at those or listen to those, don't look at them. Then you wouldn't get anything out of it. I got a couple of recommendations. I think most recently, or one of the more recent ones I read was Kragnos, Avatar of Destruction by David Geimer. My friends, don't read it if you want any bit of Kragnos. That's not the point. It's almost incidental. What is interesting is seeing the interplay between Azurites and Reclaimed. It has a little bit of a city that, is both trying to be founded and also is under attack, I think, in that story. And all in all, I found it very good. So I recommend it just from a story perspective as well.
I also really liked it.
Okay, good.
Just throwing that out there.
We had talked about Witch Hunters up above, and the sort of the poster children for Witch Hunters now is the Vendensts. And the book A Hallowed Ground by Richard Strachan is about them. So if you want to dive deeper into some witch hunter stories, that's one you could check out. And there's other witch hunter novels out there too that you can take a look at as well. And then finally, and I'm not just saying this because we just talked to the man, but if you want to talk about, how did he call it? Talk about or read about dirty humans, and of course you do, which is like, I don't know, my favorite type of humans, honestly. You're going to want to read The Path to Glory by Evan Dickin. It's not really about a city per se, though I feel like a city kind of comes into play a little bit. It's more like, what does it look like when a city falls? So tell you what, if you don't like Cities of Sigmar and you want to see them destroyed, then you should check out The Path to Glory by Evan Dickin, which is also another novella that we reviewed a long, long time ago, but it still holds up. Any other Black Library recommendations?
So it's not novels, but a few months back now, they actually did a Dawnbringer week of short stories that I recommend going out and grabbing. The short stories included are False Dawn by Christopher Allen, which is one that takes place in Hysh, which I think this is my favorite of the group. Just throwing that out there. There's Grimnirson by Graham Thomas Wilcox, Heir of Shadows by Taylor Roberts, Past Returns by Hal Wilson, and The Road to Hell's March by Luke Skull. So it's a cool selection of stories about Dawnbringer Crusades. Some of them are from within the Dawnbringer Crusades. Some of them are from outsider perspectives. And I think it's worth looking at, especially now that this Battletome is out, and revisiting maybe with the new perspectives.
Sure. The Past Returns is a short story that Davy and I did a Pocket Realms on. Oh. So if you, listener, want to get our take on that short story, then become a patron at patreon.com/themortalrealms, and you can give it a listen. Nice. I have to admit, I have to tell you this, that it is unedited and not posted yet, but maybe by the time you listen to this, it will be done. Likely, probably not, but it's right here on my desktop. I can see it. I literally have the icon highlighted, so it's in progress. But I'll tell you what, while you wait for that, we have a whole bunch of, we've got, 17 other Pocket Realms episodes that you can go and take a listen to. And with that being such a great final plug, I think maybe we can transition to our final thoughts of the Battletome. Let's go with, we'll do the same order. Will, close us out with your final thoughts or review of this Battletome. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I think this might be one of my favorite Battletomes. And not even of just like this edition, but just like so far in AOS.
Ever. Just
because of the personal level it does go to. I think it does just such a really good job of grounding the setting. And when the human faction can get grounded a bit more, it helps ground everything else and like kind of shifts perspectives a bit. I'm excited to see like future stories that are shaped because of this like restructuring of humans. The only thing I miss is the timeline section didn't give me any information on the Reclaimed themselves when the rest of the book has such a like Reclaimed focus, I would say. So because of that, I'm only going to give it 10 out of 11 Cities of Sigmar.
Oh, good rating system. All right, cool. Hey, Josh, what'd you think of the Battletome? Review it for me.
Yeah, I've got to echo a lot of what Will said. I think just the depth of description in terms of, what these Crusades are doing and how the city, how they get there, how the city is built, how it evolves, and, and the structure and all the different little windows into the life that we've got and the changes in the Reclaimed. I think there's just so much good new lore and information in here that, I highly recommend. 5 out of 5 coin malice.
Ooh, that's a good one too. I also echo what you guys said. I've said it before and I will say it again. My favorite type of Battletome is one where it's a brand new army, which isn't this. But my second favorite type of Battletome is where it's like a big sweeping release for the army, which I guess is not a surprise, right? Because the third type of Battletome is just like nominal updates and nobody likes those. So this one is right there in that sweet spot in the middle. You're not going to get a new army every day. So this is oftentimes the best you can hope for. Big new range release, a bunch of new lore that comes with it, fun justifications for where these things come from, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pretty jazzed about it. The way I'm looking at this one is, and we were talking about this, I think maybe before the recording or maybe on the recording, was this one almost feels like a brand new army even, right? Like, sure, yeah, a lot of the stuff is shared, but it focuses in on both the present day story, which the best Battletomes do, and it really calibrates the army to like where we're at currently in a way that like the first one never really even could. Honestly, that one was kind of a soupy catch up, not catch up, but in some ways, right? That previous one, and so this one really focuses in. Narrows up the conversation, which I think is maybe a detriment to some people, and I understand why. But I think it trimmed some fat and focused on the current, the present, the interesting, the here and now, which I think subsequent repeat Battletomes are supposed to be as well. So it kind of does the both of like it's new, but then also like it builds on what has come before as well. So all that. To say, I think it is a pretty big win. I mean, again, yes, I would like to see, if we are going to continue to have Elves and Dwarven, I want to see it more integrated, a more unified front, even though we're talking about diversity there. But I mean, I'm holding out hope that it'll come one day. I think they had to do first things first with like the human-centric. They had to start somewhere. Again, Age of Sigmar ostensibly is going to be around for a long time, so there's going to be plenty of time to like evolve what the Cities of Sigmar look like eventually. So I've said this before too. I look forward to the next Battletome, right? Like this almost feels like a first. Now let's see what number 2 looks like. Years from now. Oh God, I don't have a rating system. I never even do. But I will give it very high marks. I'll give it 2 out of 2 of the twin tails of a comet.
There we go.
I like it.
Nice.
Not super granular, but there we go. So I'm a big.
I was gonna say we kept on having it from 11 to 5 to 2. If we had a fourth person, they would just say 1 out of 1.
I'll give it a big 1 out of 1, 100%. All right. It's time for our reforging, but Sigmar willing, we'll be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord, drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. And Will, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Threads at Age of Sever, but the best place to find me is going to be in the Mortal Realms Discord, and I'm there as Sever.
Excellent. Hey, Josh, where can they find you on the internet?
Be at J.E. Arrington on Twitter, or again, just at the Mortal Realms Discord.
Yeah, and I'm Aaron. You can find me at Dos Asos on Twitter and also Threads. And you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. They sure are. I was hoping I could get to this section I didn't have the PDF open. I was trying to get to it in the time you guys were talking, but it's too long. I know I went too far the wrong way. Oh God, it's like I've never used a document before.
Page 44.
Is it? Oh, good call. Oh, there you go. Ha ha. Oh gosh. All right, cool. We're back. Keep going if you wanted to.
No, my mouth worked faster than my brain, and my brain finally caught up to stop it.
Well, in that case, though, what's one of your fave new things? At one point, I want to talk about our favorite cities in this book, but I don't think we're there yet. No, I have too many notes open. Oh, the last episode was 48. This episode's 84. That's crazy. What?